Alright, well, my name is Brother Safaya, which is Hebrew for Yah watches over or observes, but I'm also colloquially known as Brother DivineProspect in the Black conscious community. I have a movement called Harbinger Ministries, and what we do is that we educate people in regards to their quote-unquote African roots. We also touch on Hebraic studies. I've also incorporated some Moorish studies, some Kemetic studies, because my ultimate goal is to bring unity within our community. Even though I have a Hebrew Israelite ideology, I never put it before my people. So my actual movement actually provides services to the community, such as credit, debt, loan cancellation services, naturopathic health services. We also offer business startup programs as well as low-cost home acquirement. So if anybody wanted to get a home, we get it for low cost, because what we're trying to do is alleviate everybody from being so hung up on this system that we have and be able to govern our own affairs. I learned that when you provide services to the community that resolves the immediate social ills, people have more clarity of mind when they come into a lecture. So if anybody's interested in these services, at the end of the lecture, you can definitely feel free to speak to me. I can give you my contact information. I can sign you up for any of one of these services, and that way, as you continue to come back, you get to see that, wow, you know what? After I leave this lecture, I actually have something tangible that I can take with me to resolve something in my own home. So anytime, and I encourage you to tell anybody who you go to the lectures, ask them, well, what services do you provide the community? Because it's one thing to pay $20, $40, $50 to come to a lecture, get information, but then go back to your own community and face the same social ills you wake up to every day. You understand what I'm saying? So this is not a knock to the people who teach, but I think if we offer more services to the community as a whole and not try to be too onlyism or exclusive and only keep it for one group, but to everybody collectively, then we can work together as a team. Is that good? Is that cool? All right. Anything else you want to know about me, or are you ready to get started? You're good? All right, so the name of this lecture is a Biblical Exhumation Apology for the Black Conscious Community by Brother Safaya, aka DivineProspect. That's me, right? Now, you may see exhumation and apology. Does anybody know what exhumation means? Before I move to the next slide. Does anybody know what exhumation means? Or the word exhume? Anybody want to take a shot at it?
Like dig up. To
dig up, okay.
To unearth.
To unearth, okay. Anybody knows what apology means? Etymologically speaking, not what we use today as a connotation for apology, but if you look at the etymology for the word apology, what does apology mean? Because a lot of times people, when they were sitting at the lecture, they was like, wow, you're going to apologize for something what you do wrong, And I said, no, it's not that, but if you don't know what this means, I'm going to move forward. Nobody knows? Okay, because I'm going to define some terms before we move forward so you understand what's going on, all right? So let me go to the next slide. What is an apology? Apology is a formal justification or defense of or for something. Got it? Now, if you look at this word, it comes from the Greek word means apo, which means out from, and logi, or comes from logos, which means speech. So out from speech, meaning that you're giving a defense out of speech. And this is pretty much what an apology means. Now, the modern connotation for apology is for you to say, I'm sorry for doing something, or to give an excuse. Well, what's an excuse? That means you're telling somebody the reason why you did something. And it stemmed from this etymon of the word. All right? So let's move forward. Now, what's the definition of exhume? Okay, two brothers right here was pretty much on point. This is kind of small, but I'm going to read it out for you. Exhume means to dig out something buried, especially a corpse, from the ground. So ex means out, and zoom means a body or from the ground. So you're taking something out of the ground, and more than likely refers to a body or a corpse. All right, you following me? All right, let's move forward. Now, what is my motivation for this PowerPoint? I actually had a smaller edition of this PowerPoint, but when I went outside of the TV, there was an individual that called in. I don't know if you know who my brother is. Brother Uncle Cat. You see him right there? I got a little image of him right there. And that's me, right? So towards the end, if anybody didn't see, towards the end, he was asking me different questions, right? And what I will say is that by me interfacing with the Black conscious community and the Kemetic community, it helped me to grow. Because you can't have one without the other. You need some kind of balance. So whenever my belief system or my ideology is challenged, it makes me step my game up 10 times more. So this is why I encourage anybody to have any particular standpoint. I love interfacing with them because it helps me to grow. Now there was a question he asked me, and I'm going to play it for you so you can hear it. He asked me a question while I was on the show. All right? So I'm going to play it for you. All right? Let me make sure this is up all the way so y'all can hear it. May have to play it back again, but I'm gonna turn it up. And y'all let me know if y'all can hear it. So I'm gonna play it from over here.
You know, in the introductory presentation, is to actually show some Hebrew Israelite graves.
I have a PowerPoint that deals with that, exactly. I have a PowerPoint that deals with that. So if you want to do that, grave sites, yes. Well, obviously, if you have bones, you can do it. I understand the science. Do I have that?
Yes.
You'll see. I'm gonna say you'll see. You trying to get me to give my presentations early? Nah. Me and you gonna do that separately. I'm gonna put that up. All right. So if you listen to the video, I'm sitting here minding my business. Uncle winds up calling in because anytime there's somebody talking about Hebrew, you want to go in on them, right? Little did he know what type of Hebrew original. So he said, listen, you know, what would be good for your PowerPoint presentation if you actually show me some Hebrew graves? I want to see some graves, brother. Give me some bones, give me something. I said, yo, I got a lecture for that. I got a PowerPoint for that. He said, you do? I was like, yeah. He said, some real graves, some real bones. I said, you'll see. And I invited him to be here, and he's not here, interestingly enough, but that's fine. But I just wanted to say that because my interfacing with him has challenged me to put more information into this PowerPoint, what I'm doing is I'm going to show you all these graves. But before I get to that point, I want to touch on something in regards to Kemet as well, because I want us to be be mindful of a couple of things before we have this demand to look for graves from other cultures. All right, so let's move forward. All right, now, are exhumations an African tradition? Does anybody want to answer that? Do you think, traditionally speaking, from ancient cultures, that it was okay to go and dig up bodies? Why not? Why can't I go and dig up your great-great-grandfather?
It disturbs the ancestors.
Do you hear the Queen say that one more time, Queen?
It disturbs the ancestors.
It disturbs the ancestors. Now, if we was to go to, there you go. If we was to go to Africa and we were supposed to speak to a Griot is somebody who was commissioned to remember the culture, the history of the people, etc. They were good storytellers. And we're going to see a video of an African Griot that's interfacing with a white archaeologist that's coming to his community because he wants to get information on Mansa Musa. So he's speaking to this Griot in this community. If you never heard of Mansa Musa, he was the one that was probably the richest man in Africa at one point in time, had all this gold, was making all these expeditions. Supposedly he sailed off the continent, nobody ever heard from him again. But now this white archaeologist, right, European archaeologist, is going to this country in West Africa and he's looking for evidence of his existence, because if you look, there's no archaeological record of this guy's existence, just oral tradition. So I want you to watch this video, and after you watch this video of this Griot, this local Griot who's highly respected, watch how he interfaces with the European archaeologists, all right? Y'all ready? Y'all ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Narrow, overgrown path. The place I'm heading to is a little-known ruin called Fanfan. Boubacar has told me that it's very sacred and an important piece of the Malian Empire's history. Boubacar.
Yes. Hunter.
Hey, Sheikh.
Bye, DJ. Welcome to Fanfan.
What is Fanfan?
Well, Fanfan is a place where they used to bring the princes to hide them and to educate them.
So Kanka Musa himself may have spent time here.
Who knows? Maybe he might have been in this room. Who knows?
Right in here.
Yes.
Boubacar says that from the 13th century onwards, all the kings of the Malian Empire were trained here, including Kanka Musa. It's my first concrete link to the man himself. So this was a fort in a sense.
Oh yes, it's a fortress. You see? Look at this wall here. We see the vestiges of, that archaeological structure. And then you had, layers of walls protecting this sanctuary.
So has there been any archaeology done here then?
Well, it's not in our culture really to dig out our past. The way we dig our history is different from the way we do it in the West. You dig sites, archaeologically speaking, you write documents, you write history down.
Right. Here
we don't do that. This won't tell you anything more than what I just said. But then if you want...
I've run into another taboo. It's forbidden to disturb sites as sacred as this one. It was was hard enough just to get permission for me to visit. There's no way anybody would be allowed to dig here. Still, I could tell this was something special, even without formal archaeology. The oral history of Fanfan is very detailed, and the fact that it's been kept secret tells me how important the site is. The griots may not tell me about Kanka Musa, but I'm getting closer to his story. So it's time to expand the search. I'm gonna follow the money.
I'm gonna follow the money. Now, after watching this video, and there's plenty of these like that, I want to give a shout out to my brother Penahizi or Melchizedek. He's the one who actually posted this video on his Facebook page. I've seen videos similar to this, but when I was trying to put the presentation up, I added this at the last minute, so I couldn't really come across those videos. But I remember him putting the video and I asked him, and he gave me the link, so I cut the video up and I put it here. But if you can see, white archaeologists, when they go to West Africa or even other parts of indigenous Africa and they ask, can we dig? The local people there say, no, you're gonna disturb our ancestors. So what they do is that they go to the head of state and they say, hey, here's X amount of money, can you let us dig? You see, it's not African condition. So when we make demands, we wanna see bodies. This is not African. All right, let's move forward. Now, the first part of my lecture is called the case for Kemet. Why is there a case for Kemet? There's a reason why I'm prefacing my later part, my second part, with the case for Kemet. Because I'm trying to establish balance, because I'm trying to do what in Kemetic ideology we call ma'at, and in Hebrew ideology we call a system of righteousness or zedek, right? So I have to be able to show the case for Kemet because I receive a lot of inquiries from my Kemetic brothers asking me where these bodies at, right? I try to tell them, listen, there's even inconsistencies in the ancient Kemetic record. They say, well, we want to see, show us. Because a lot of this information has a smoke screen over it. So what I want to do is I'm going to be very fair. I want to show a case for Kemet before I move for the case for Israel. Is that all right with y'all? Okay, let's move forward. All right, now, the purpose of mummification, right? This is Anubis. Anubis is responsible. He is an Amduat. If anybody here is familiar with the Kemetic culture? Anybody here? You a little bit? Okay. So if you don't want a lesson on that, after this debate that I'm about to do, I'm going to be teaching on Kemet as well. But Anubis was considered one of the quote-unquote gods who was responsible in the underworld called Amduat. And his job was to weigh the scales whenever a Nasut or whenever a king would make it to the different stages in the underworld. And then they would go to this place where there was a scale, what's called the scale of Ma'at. You have a feather on one end and then the Nasut's heart on the other end, and he would weigh the scales, while Tahuti, the scribe, would be writing and documenting everything that happened. Now, there's a reason why we have mummification. Now, before I move forward, does anybody want to touch on that real quick? Does anybody know the purpose of mummification in ancient Kemet? Or maybe something you may have heard on TV or may have watched a lecture on. Does anybody know the significance of mummification? Because Anubis was the quote-unquote deity responsible for the mummification of the ancestors or the Kemetic kings. I know y'all must have seen movies with the mummy. Y'all seen the movie The Mummy? I know some of y'all see the movie The Mummy in here, right? Y'all see it? Does anybody know what mummification is? Can somebody answer so I can move on? It's preserving the body, right? But why? There you go. Got it, all right? Because upon the death of the Nasut, your Ka and your Ba separate, okay? One is the spirit, one is your soul. They separate when you leave your body. Depending on the rites of passage that you go through in Amduat will determine if you get resurrected or if you become an Ankh and you are up there with the other deities in what's called Tu'at or Aru, which is the heavenly paradise, right? So I'm going to go into some information real quick. This is called Mummification in Ancient Egypt, and this article is in the Ancient History Encyclopedia, published on January 18, 2012, if anybody want to go look up the source. All right? It says religion was a very important part of the mummification process because most of those who remained were mummified were kings and pharaohs. A lot of ceremony and prayers was involved in ensuring the body and spirit was prepared for the afterlife. Priests played roles in every step of the process, including wrapping the mummy with linen strips, placing the internal organs in specially prepared canopic jars, and blessing the entrance of the mummy tomb at the funeral. Why was it important to the Egyptians to preserve the body? The ancient Egyptians believed that the body was the house for the soul. Even after death, the Egyptians believed that the spirit could only live if the body was preserved forever. If the body was lost, so too was the spirit. Okay? In Egyptian religion, the spirit was made up of three parts, the Ka, the Ba, and the Ak. The Ka remained in the burial tomb, using the offerings and objects placed within it. The Ba was considered the soul of the person, and it was free to fly outside the confines of the tomb. And it was the Ak that traveled to the underworld for judgment and to gain entrance into the afterlife. Alright? And another entry called the Mummy in the New World Encyclopedia says, although mummification existed in other cultures, eternal life was the main focus of all ancient Egyptians, which meant preserving the body forever. Every culture believed the body, even after death, the body was needed as home for a person's Ka, which without it would be condemned to eternal wandering in the afterlife. Right? It's another one, the afterlife in ancient Egypt. This is from an article on PBS Nova, PBS, Public Broadcasting Service. Alright? Unlike most scholars of the ancient world, Salima Ikranj knows her subjects on an intimate face-to-face basis. In this interview, Ikram, Egyptologist at the American University in Cairo, sheds light on why mummification was practiced in ancient Egypt. What the ancients thought the afterlife would be like, and why of some 70 million mummies made, very few may remain intact today. So one of the questions they asked her was, did they also bury, even sacrifice their servants now? So if the Nasut, who was the king, when he dies, or he's about to die, somebody's asking, were the servants killed as well? Because they probably heard this before. She says, during the first dynasty of Egypt, 2920 to 2900 BC, you actually have servant burials. This was only done for kings. Some of the chosen servants would be put to death and buried around the king's tomb. These people were supposed to be very privileged because they would hang in the sun god. After the first dynasty, instead of killing off people, they would have images, statues of their servants. Or they would write down the names of the people who were to come join them in the afterlife. Why did the ancient Egyptians mummify bodies? According to their religion, when you die, your soul continued. But unlike in a lot of modern religions, your soul was not just a formless thing. It actually could animate a statue of a dead person, or much better, the body of a dead person. And that's why mummification took place, so that the body will be preserved to host the soul. You follow me? All right. I'm going to just read some of this. There's a lot here. But it says, in order to live for all eternity and be presented in front of Osir, which is colloquially known as Osiris in Greek terminology, the body of the deceased had to be preserved by mummification so that the soul could reunite with it and take pleasure in the afterlife. After the money was prepared, it would need to be reanimated symbolically by a priest. The opening of the mouth ceremony was conducted by a priest who would utter a spell, touch the mummy or sarcophagus with a ceremonial adze, a copper or stone blade. The ceremony ensured that the mummy could breathe and speak in the afterlife. In a similar fashion, the priest could utter spells to reanimate the mummy's arms, legs, and other body parts. You follow me? The priest may even be the king's successor. Move the body through the causeway to the mortuary temple. This is where prayers were recited, incense was burned, and more rituals were performed to help prepare the king for his final journey. The king's mummy was then placed inside the pyramid, along with an enormous amount of food, drink, furniture, clothes, and jewelry, which were to be used in the afterlife. The pyramid was sealed so that no one can enter it again. However, the king's soul could move through the burial chamber as it wished. After the funeral, the king becomes a god or a deity or deified ancestor and could be worshipped in the temples beside his pyramid. Ancient Egyptians believed the burial process to be an important part in sending humans to a comfortable afterlife. The Egyptians believed that after death, the deceased could still have such feelings of anger or hold a grudge as the living can. The deceased were also expected to support and help their living family. They believed that the bond ka would enable the dead person to support their family. The bond made it possible for an invisible twin to be released from the body to support the family. So while one is in eternity, the other one is still here influencing the earth. While the ka would recognize the twin when it came back to the body. With the ideas of the dead being so valuable, it is clear why the Egyptians treated the deceased with respect. Are y'all following me so far? All right, move forward. Was exhumation in violation of ma'at? You know, ma'at is truth, order, justice, law. It's to keep things balanced. The opposite of it is called ishfet, and that was destruction, chaos, lies, disorder, etc. When you study Kemet, you understand these terms. Now, there's a point in the pyramid text of the Old Kingdom when the ancient Asuts, when they died, when they got to the scales that were being weighed, their heart with the feather of Ma'at, they would have confessions. The confession that they made was made to one of the 42 spirits that ruled on behalf of Osiris, and he had to show his allegiance to these spirits by reciting what he did not do in the afterlife so he could be cleared of any charges or any wrongdoing or any guilt, okay? So we want to know, if we pull up a body out the grave and disturb the dead, is this part of Ma'at? Let's see. Now, this is the petitioner announces the 42 divine principles of Ma'at. You can look into the pyramid text of Unis, spelled 125, and it'll list for you the different 42 principles of Ma'at. You also have Pepi, Teti, all these old kingdom Nasuts. All of them had these confessions, and it was all inscribed into what's called the pyramid text. All right, so 125 of Unis, also you have Anai, Seti, Pepi, Teti, all of them also had it, so you can go back and look into it yourself. And if anybody wants any of the resources that I had used for these slides, just let me know and I can email it to you so you can go back and double check my work, okay? Now, the petitioner announces the 42 divine principles of Ma'at. In chapter 125 of the Papyrus of Anai, we find the petitioner led by Anubis, who I showed you earlier, into Du'a and pronouncing his or her 42 affirmative declarations listed below from Budge's public domain. Anything that's in a public domain means that you can access it for free, because it's been on the market for X amount of time. The publishing and the patent for it had already expired, and now it becomes open for the public's edification. All right, of the 42 divine principles of Ma'at, here we go. 38 says, I have not stolen what belongs to the god or goddess. Remember the Nasut? After he goes to the rites of passage, he becomes deified, and his twin influences the regular living, and then his spirit goes to what's called the realm of Tu'at. He becomes an Ak, and his Ak becomes a being of light. So he has to say, I have not stolen what belongs to the god. So if any of his ancestors were deified as a god, he was not to have stolen anything, not just from them, but also anybody else that they considered to be a deified ancestor. 39 says, I have not stolen from or disrespected the deceased. We see that the reason why they kept things preserved is because they can enjoy the afterlife. He's saying here that I have not disturbed or disrespected the deceased. We just saw, is it an African tradition to exhume bodies? Also, he says, I have not destroyed property belonging to gods or goddesses. It says, after the petitioner's testimony containing the 42 affirmative declarations, the weighing of the Khan for truth, and the reading of the scales, it is said that the doer of Ma'at is administered Ma'at. If the petitioner is deemed by the goddess Ma'at to be in substantial compliance with the 42 laws of Ma'at, the petitioner passes from Du'at to the field of reeds, which is Arus, where Osir sits as the final gatekeeper. This is by Vanessa Cross, JD LLM. And again, you can just Google this or go to Budget's public domain and look at this in the Papyrus of Anai. There's a reason why I'm showing you guys this, but we're going to move forward and we're going to get more understanding of it. Now, did the Nasuts of Kemet intend to be exhumed? What if that was your great-grandfather? How would you feel looking at him in a museum like that? If that was your great-grandfather, how would you feel? You know, kind of weird, right? You know? But I'm going to show you some stuff, so y'all walk with me. How you doing, sister? Meet the picture of Blast. Glad you was able to make it. Now, you know, you missed the icebreaker, so I'm going to be nice on you. Just tell us who you are, where you coming from, so that we could just smile with you, laugh, we can say your name and all of that.
Okay, I'm Fatima Therapy. I'm from Snellville.
And what brought you here?
I just saw some information on Facebook. I've been connected with my brother on Facebook, so I thought I'd come and find out a little more.
Thank you, sister. You don't make you stand up like an A or anything like that, so we just, you know, just a little bit. Okay. So everybody knows who the sister is now, right? Okay, so we can move forward. Now the question is that in the suits of Kemet, this means the ruler of Kemet, intend to be exhumed. When they were buried, did they have an intention to say, okay, you know what? Hundreds of years later, I want them to be able to dig up my body. Did they believe that? Okay, let's move forward. Let's see. Right? This right here says the entrance stairway leading to the burial chamber in early dynastic and Old Kingdom mastaba tombs. So mastabas was considered like a ben, or it was a mound, and then underneath the mound was a chamber that led down to where the Nasuts were buried. This is before they started building the pyramids. They created these mastabas, and you'll see this in a lot of the pre-dynastic people who were buried when you study that era of ancient Kemet, right? It says the tombs was blocked by one or more stone slabs which slid into place in vertical slots. The entrance passage or shaft was also blocked by rubble. The burial chamber in the tomb of Senuseret at Lisht was protected by a series of stone slabs, the first of which, once lowered, could not be forced upwards again because metal or wooden bolts was released from the holes and the lateral grooves in the slab, effectively locking it. When the 12th dynasty architects changed the internal arrangements of every pyramid with each successive reign, they culminated with the pyramid of Amenemhet III at Harara, which had a series of blind passages and concealed trapdoors. All right, let's move forward. Okay, the Theban hills are dominated by the peak of Al-Quran. All right, known to the ancient Egyptians as Tadahent, or the peak. It has a pyramid-shaped appearance, and it is probable that this echoed the pyramids of the Old Kingdom more than 1,000 years prior to the first royal burials carved here. Its isolated position also resulted in reduced access. All right? It says here, the problems of tomb construction can be seen with the tombs of Ramses III and his father, Sennacherib. Sennacherib started to excavate KV11, which is a name from one of the Valley of the Tombs of the Kings, but broke into, now listen now, this is one king breaking into another king's tomb. Tomb of Amenesemes, I hope I'm saying that right, Amenmese, I'm sorry. So construction was abandoned and he instead usurped the tomb of Tuanseret, KV14. That means you had one Nasut that's saying, listen, you know what? I don't want to invest all this money in creating my own tomb since one already exists. Let me see if I can break into this older Nasut and use his tomb. But he can't break into there, so he found another Nasut's tomb, KV14. He broke into there, and that's when he set up shop to be buried at. See, this is interesting stuff, because you don't hear a lot of this, right? In the Pyramid Age, the tomb of the king was associated with the mortuary temple located close to the pyramid. As the tomb of the king was hidden, this mortuary temple was located away from the burial, closer to the cultivation facing towards Thebes. The area of the Valley of the Kings was a site for tourism and antiquity. Many of the tombs have graffiti written by these ancient tourists. Did y'all know that? Jules Valiet located over 2,100 Greek and Latin graffiti. That doesn't sound like somebody's respecting those tombs, right? Along with a smaller number in Phoenician, Cypriot, Lycian, Coptic, and other languages. The majority of the ancient graffiti are found in KV9. If you go there now to ancient Kemet, you can see that, which contains just under 1,000 of them. The earliest positively dated graffiti dates to 278 BC. Now, during this period is when the Greeks took over ancient Kemet. So now you have people who desecrated the pyramids and started drawing graffiti on them. That doesn't sound like people respected it at all. That doesn't sound like these people cared anything about my art, but we're going to move forward. All right? It's a little bit more reading. I'm not going to read too much of it, but it says, curses related to tombs are extremely rare, possibly because the idea of such desecration was unthinkable and even dangerous to record in writing. The most frequently occurred in private tombs of the Old Kingdom era. The tomb of Ankh-Tifi of the 9th to 10th dynasty contains the warning, any ruler who shall do evil or wickedness to this coffin may Hedem, who is a local deity, not accept any goods he offers, and may his heir not inherit. The tomb of Kentiki Ikeki of the 9th to 10th dynasty contains an inscription. As for all men who shall enter this my tomb and puke, there will be judgment, and an end shall be made for him. I shall seize his neck like a bird. I shall cast the fear of myself into him. Curses of the Old Kingdom era are less common, though more severe, sometimes invoking the wrath of Tahuti or the destruction of the Sekhmet. The Sekhmet was the eye of Ra, and that is who Hathor is if you look into mythology. Zahi Hawass quotes, and he's an Egyptologist, an example of the curse. Cursed be those who disturb the rest of a Nasut Pharaoh king. They shall break the seal of this tomb. If they break the seal of this tomb, they shall meet death by disease that no doctor can diagnose. And then Zahi Hawass and the rest of this goes into talking about a story where there were some archaeologists that actually went into these old dynasty kingdom tombs and was excavating, and all of these curses was coming upon them. So now you see that even though these Nasuts were superstitious, there's a reason why they did these curses, because they did not want their bodies to be tampered with. So when we demand this stuff, is that African? Okay, well, let's move forward. A Curse of the Money. This is from National Geographic, right? By Brian Handworth. Okay, Salim Ikram, who we spoke of earlier, an Egyptologist at the American University in Cairo and a National Geographic Society grantee, believes the curse concept did exist in ancient Egypt as part of a primitive security system. She noted that some mastaba, early non-period tombs, walls in Giza and Saqqara, were actually inscribed with curses meant to terrify those who would desecrate or rob the royal resting place. They tend to threaten desecrators, she says, with divine retribution by the council of the gods, Ikram said, or by death by crocodile, lions, or scorpions, or snakes. And Amduat, you have what's called the goddess Amet. What Amet would do is that if your heart weighed too heavy and the feather of Ma'at weighed too light, Amet will come in the form of a hippopotamus, a lion, or a crocodile and consume you. See? So when they were speaking that these curses of crocodile lions will come upon the people, this was part of their eschatological thinking in regards to the afterlife and their rites of passage through Amduat, or the underworld. So you can see here, they did not intend for nobody to disturb their bodies. There's a reason why they have mummification as well. Are y'all following me? Y'all following me, all right? How you doing, sister? Can you just introduce yourself to the people so we could just know who you are? Everybody did it already, so don't feel too uncomfortable if you do. We just want to know your name and what brought you out, that's all.
My name is Debbie, and I just came by to check on a friend here, and then so happened we had a lecture, and he invited me in.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you, sis. Everybody familiar with sis now? We know her name? You good? All right. So let's move forward, okay? Now, this is an article by Joyce Till Desley. It's called Akhenaten, The Search for an Egyptian King. She says here, Marie Corelli was the first to mention an ancient curse. Death comes on the wings to he who enters the tomb of Pharaoh. Soon it was accepted fact that this, or slight variant, death comes on swift wings to him that touches the tomb of the Pharaoh, was carved over the entrance of King Tut's tomb, or carved above the entrance to the burial chamber, or inscribed on a mud brick tablet found in either the antechamber, or the burial chamber. Naturally, so potent a curse cannot be allowed to taint the excavation. Neither Carter nor Gardner, the presumed translator of the curse, nor any of the other scholars present feared the curse then or took it seriously, but they worried that the Egyptian laborers would. So now, the European archaeologists going in, they didn't care nothing about these curses, they didn't affect them, but the local people they was asking to help them said, wait a second, we don't want to have nothing to do with this, man, because we know it's sacrilegious for us to go and tamper with these tombs. So they're trying, what they did was they started to pay the people and said, listen, we're going to give you a Hampton fee ticket, your family, just help us for a little bit, you ain't got to go in, but just help us get in. That doesn't sound like upholding my heart either. That sounds like somebody using money as a means of getting you to do what they want them to do. At least the local people feared it, and they was like, no, we don't want to do it. So if you continue to read that, it says, but they worried that the Egyptian laborers would, and since they were dependent on native helpers, mention of the clay tablet was wiped from the written record of the tomb's discovery. So now, they say, okay, you know what, these people are afraid because they could probably read this stuff, let's just white it out. Because if we white it out, and they don't see it, then they come in and, they'll help us out. But if they're reading this, and then they see it, they may not help. This talks about some grimy stuff that's going down that you probably never heard before, right? Okay, it says even the tablet itself disappeared from the artifact collection, but not from the memory of those who read it. The tablet and the curse on it are cited everywhere, but it was never photographed and is considered lost. It says a second slightly less explicit curse was apparently written on the back of a statue. This magic figure was discovered in the main chamber of the tomb. It is I who drive back the robbers of the tomb with the flames of the desert. I am the protector of Akhenaten Amen. It's grave. This is inserted on inscription that's by his tomb. Let's move forward. Grave robbery and plundering in Kemet compromises the burial record. See? Ancient Egyptian tombs are one of the most common examples of tomb or grave robbery. Most of the tombs in Egypt's Valley of the Kings were robbed within 100 years of their sealing, including the tomb of the famous King Tut, who was raided at least twice before it was discovered in 1922. As most of the artifacts in its ancient burial sites have been discovered, it is through the conditions of the tomb and presumed articles that are missing in which historians and archaeologists are able to determine whether the tomb has been robbed. So they actually, when they went into the tomb, there was a record that indicated all the items that were there. So they, even though they took out most of the items, they say, wait a second, in this list that we have here, some things are missing. So when they started to go into the record of the people, the tradition, they found out that people was robbing this too. Okay? It says, Egyptian pharaohs often kept records of the precious items in their tomb, so an inventory check is presumed for archaeologists. Oftentimes, warnings would be left by the pharaohs in the tombs of calamities and curses that would be laid upon anyone who touched the treasure or the bodies, which did little to deter grave robbers. These people was in a desperate situation. Listen, let a curse come before me right now, starving, I'm hungry, I'm going to go take in what's there. And a lot of times they did that because someone in the suits was not following Ma'at, and the people didn't respect them. We're going to move forward. Okay? Almost all of the tombs have been ransacked. Several papyri have been found that describe the trials of tomb robbers. These date mostly from the late 12th dynasty. One of these, Papyrus Maya B, describes the robbery of the tomb of Ramses VI and was probably written in the year 9 of Ramses the 9th. It says the foreigner Nisamun, took us up and showed us the tomb of King Ramses. And I spent 4 days breaking into it. It says, we being present, all 5, we opened the tomb and entered it. We found a cauldron of bronze, 3 wash bowls of bronze. The valley also seems to have suffered an official plundering through the virtual civil war which started in the reign of Ramses XI. The tombs were opened, all the valuables removed, and the mummies collected into 2 large caches. One in the tomb of Amenhotep II contained 16, and others were hidden within Amenhotep's first tomb. A few years later, most of them were moved to the Deir el-Bahri cache, contained no less than 40 royal mummified mummies and their coffins. Only these tombs, whose locations were lost, KV 62, KV 63, KV 46, although both KV 62, KV 46 were robbed soon after their actual closure, were undisturbed in this period. So now we see people going in and just robbing graves. Last article, this is from foxnews.com, right? This says, Egypt has a long history of grave robbers. Indeed, grave robbing has been the norm in Egypt since ancient times. At the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, a 4,000-year-old cenotaph, a stone tablet inscribed with hieroglyphics, recounts a short-lived rebellion against King Mentuhotep in which the poor smashed open royal tombs and looted the gold and jewels buried with the mummies. The museum also has a 7th century BC papyrus of the grave robber. The text describes a contemporaneous scandal in Luxor, which is also known as Thebes, where one official of the 26th dynasty accused another of looting the tomb in the Valley of the Kings. The account traces how royal investigators initially exonerated the accused, but upon further examination found him guilty and sentenced him to a whipping. The tomb of the 2500 BC king Cheops, or Hecatops, in Giza was sealed with these three thick stone doors, but according to Hawass, who we heard earlier was an Egyptologist, there's evidence that the 19th century thieves used explosives to blast them away. Hawass notes that many royal tombs had very tight entrances to make extracting their contents as difficult as possible. Now we're seeing a lot of crazy things going on. Now I'm gonna read this to you, not all of it, but just some of it. And I want you to see who I got this from. Does anybody know who Brother Jonathan of Amen Ra Squad is? Anybody heard of him? Brother Jonathan is a good brother of mine, very good research that he does. I have nothing but respect for him. But because Brother Jonathan is verbally or intellectually discoursing with the Hebrew Israelites, who I'm on the side of providing research support, me and him, we have verbal discussions or dialogue or diatribe in regards to our particular positions. Now, I pulled something off of his page called rapgodwordpress.com, and you can type that in. His name is Casual. He used to be a rapper named Casual, right? If you go to this WordPress, which is his own blog page, I pulled some information out here. Now, this quotation I read before, but the reason why I use a quote from his page, because I want people in the Kemetic community to know that there's some teachers that are there that are aware of the things that I'm telling you about, right? But a lot of this is not making headline news, and there's a reason for that. So on his blog, he says, the first European archaeologist, listen to this now, in Kemet or Egypt were also considered tomb robbers by some. Dr. Peter Lacovara has this to say about the treatment of the pyramid by early archaeologists as they disguised their quest for riches and a science called archaeology. That's crazy. This is from our brother Casual, or Jonathan from Amin Roswell. This is on his page, right? So he puts this quotation here. It says, the first and probably the most spectacular discovery made in Nubia was the treasure found in Giuseppe Perlini, an Italian physician who was also appointed surgeon major to the Egyptian army. In 1830, he was posted with a detachment to the Sudan, and he soon became intrigued by the rumors of great riches hidden in the ancient ruins. So he requested permission from the local authorities to conduct excavations at a number of sites near Khartoum, and despite warnings against bandits in the desert who might hear of any discoveries he might make, he decided to go ahead and explore these sites and engage Antonio Safani, an Albanian merchant living in Khartoum, to act as his partner. Together they hired men, purchased camels and food. In August of 1834, they set out for a site of Naga. It says here, after a few days of digging, with few results, also with the death of 5 camels from heat stroke and lack of water, they decided to give up and journeyed northward and eventually wound up at the village of Griot. It says the site of the fabled ancient city of Meroe. And if you want to know anything about Nubia, know who the Meroe kings and Candaces or Kandakes is. That's very, very great study if you want to research Nubia, right? There, Ferlini set his sights on the pyramid tombs located on the desert scarp. The first few tombs that Ferlini opened contained little more than strip bones left by the ancient robbers. But finally he decided one last try. And he set his sights on one of the biggest pyramids in the northern cemetery. This pyramid was known as the Ben Griot North 6, measured 88 feet high and 61 feet square at the base. Fortunately, it had already impressed the French traveler Frederick Calliat, who made a careful sketch of it during his visit to the site in 1821. But as a treasure hunter, rather than an archaeologist, Ferlini had his men climb to the top of the pyramid and tear it apart stone by stone, hurling them down to the sides of the pyramid. This guy is bugging out. Ferlini recounted, we made the men remove the larger of the stones, which covered up the upper part, and then when we were able to see that the chamber was rectangular in shape and that its walls were formed of flat stones, the first object that met our gaze was a large mass covered over with a white piece of linen cloth. However, as soon as we touched it, it fell into dust. Under this was a rectangular funerary, I think it says couch or bier of wood. Under this bier, I found a vase, which contained objects wrapped in a piece of linen similar to that which I have just mentioned. Close to the vase on the floor of the chamber were arranged symmetrically by means of threads, etc. So some of all the items found there, and if you look down here to what Casual or Brother Jonathan says, as we see, these early European archaeologists were more concerned with tomb robbing. They didn't care about Ma'at. They didn't care about the ancestors of ancient Kemet, who created all of these large edifices and left us a cultural system for us to extract and apply today in certain aspects. They didn't care about this. What they did was, they was using archaeology in the name of science to go and rob tombs. You see? If I want treasure in there, in order for me to politically correct, no, we're just excavating, we just want to get some artifacts and understand. Look how they disrespected the tombs. That's not African, and that's not Ma'at. Because as we can see, a lot of the locals did not want to be involved in this. But they have family that's starving at home, and this man is promising you to give you some of the riches he discovers in there. You may want to change your mind. Let's move forward. Okay? Now, have all the bodies of the Nasuts been exhumed? Have all the bodies of the ancient pharaohs, the Nasuts kings, do you think all of them have been dug up? Do we have the record of every reigning Nasut in ancient Kemet? No, right? Okay. It's one thing to say no, it's another thing to look at articles that say otherwise. I mean, that agrees with that. This is from PBS Nova, Missing Tombs of the Pharaohs. It says here, 3 ancient Egyptian dynasties buried their pharaohs in the Valley of the Kings. They were Dynasty 18 to Dynasty 20, which together comprised the New Kingdom and stretched from 1550 to 1070 BC. Dynasty dates remain under debate. In the nearly 2 centuries that amateur and professional Egyptologists have turned over the valley's limestone rubble, it says they have accounted for the tombs of most god kings from the New Kingdom. Yet a few have never been located, including those of some of the most famed figures from ancient Egyptian history. And this goes in to give you examples of the ones that they were not able to find and the ones that they did find. All right, so let's move forward. Right, Mummy Mysteries, multiple tombs hidden in Egypt's Valley of the Kings. This says that the consensus is that there are probably several smaller tombs like the recently found KV 63 and 64 yet to be found. But there's still the possibility of finding a royal tomb, wrote Gonim in the email. The queens of the late 18th dynasty are missing, as are some pharaohs of the new kingdom such as Ramses VIII. The sentiment was echoed by the famous and at times controversial Egyptologist Zahi Hawass at a lecture in Toronto this past summer. Hawass was the leader of the Valley of the Kings team. The tomb of Thutmose II, not found yet. The tomb of Ramses VIII is not yet found. All the queens of Dynasty 18 were buried in the valley and the tombs are not yet found, said Hawass, former minister for antiquities during the lecture. This could be another era of archaeology, he added in an interview. Gonim said that it is hard to say how many tombs remain undiscovered, but it's more than just a couple. Inconsistencies in the Kemetic Kings list. So now that we have an issue, we haven't even found all the bodies, which to me I think is a great thing because at least those people they have not found can rest peacefully, right? But there's also inconsistencies in the Kemetic Kings list, and when you study the Kemetic Kings list and start to look at the different Nusus there and then compare that to the bodies that have been found and have not been found, are we going to say that the ones that we have not exhumed didn't exist? No, we wouldn't assume that. It's just because they haven't found the body doesn't mean they didn't exist. But if you look at this King's list, you would compare it to what was found to see who we do have the bodies of and know who we don't have the bodies of. The problem is there are several King's lists and they all don't agree. There's several inconsistencies and there's a reason for that, right? It says here, there are several remains of Kings lists available. There's one at Abydos, the Palermo Stone, Manetho's versions, and several others. Unfortunately, no two are the same. Although they all clearly originate from the original King's list, deciding which is more accurate has been a matter of debate since Egyptology became an intellectual sport. It has already been noted that Khnum Khufu is not mentioned on any of the known Kings lists, which makes it unlikely that there was ever a Nusuk with that name, or he was deleted earlier than the known Kings list. We know that the lists were manipulated and that in certain cases names have been omitted. Why would somebody want to omit certain kings unless the people did not like what they were doing, or the priesthood? Very interesting. First one is called the Abydos Kings list. We just mentioned that, right? This is the image of the Abydos Kings list. This is what it looks like. All of these are called shens or cartouches, and they all house the name of the Nusuk, right? These are all little ones that are here. You can actually go through it and you'll see this on one of the walls, and it'll show you which kings is which, right? Now, pay attention. The Abydos Kings list, also known as the Abydos table, is a list of names of 76 kings of ancient Egypt, found on the wall of the temple of Seti I in Abydos, Egypt. It consists of 3 rows of 38 cartouches. It says borders enclosing the name of the king in each row. The upper 2 rows contain the names of the kings, while the 3rd row merely repeats Seti I's throne name and praenomen. It says, besides providing the order of the Old Kingdom kings, it is the sole source to date of the names of many of the kings of the 7th and 8th dynasties, so the list is valued greatly for that reason. This list omits the names of many earlier pharaohs who are apparently considered illegitimate, such as Akhenaten, Hatshepsut, Spenkhara, Tut, and An. So now you have some people, some scribes, that listen some kings, and some of them they didn't really approve of. So I said, you know what, we're just not gonna put them in the list. That issue. Next one is called the Palermo Stone. Everything I'm showing here for you can look this up if you want. You can read information on it. This is very interesting stuff, right? What is the Palermo Stone? Palermo Stone is one of 7 surviving fragments of a stela known as the Royal Annals of the Old Kingdom of Ancient Egypt. The stela contains a list of the kings of Egypt from the 1st dynasty through to the early part of the 5th dynasty and noted significant events in each year of their reigns. It was probably made during the 5th dynasty, approximately 2392 to 2283 BCE. The Palermo Stone is held in the Antonio Salinas Regional Archaeological Museum in the city of Palermo, Italy, for which it derives its name, right? The Palermo Stone and other fragments of royal annals preserve what is probably the oldest historical text that has survived from ancient Egypt and form a key source for Egyptian history in the Old Kingdom. There are controversies regarding the dates of the Palermo stone and of the royal annals and records. Arguments have raged as to whether the inscription was done in one go or was added over time as to whether it dates from the period it describes. It has been argued that the stela has made much later, perhaps in the 25th dynasty. It seems clear from the content of the description, even in the royal annals as preserved by the Palermo stone and other fragments, were not carved as soon or after the period they describe. They are directly based on an Old Kingdom original. Now pay attention. There are also controversies as whether all surviving fragments are part of the same stela or come from different copies. It has been suggested in this connection that not all of the fragments held in Cairo are genuine. It says the text is difficult to decipher both due to the state of preservation of the inscription and due to its antiquity. If the text is a later copy rather than the 5th dynasty original, there's also the possibility that errors crept in during the copying process. Next one is Manetho's King's List. Anybody heard of Manetho here? Okay. So that's it. The King's List that Manetho had access to is unknown to us. But of the surviving King's List, the one most similar to his is the Turin Royal Canon, or the Turin Papyrus, the oldest source with which we can compare to Manetho or Old Kingdom annals. From the New Kingdom are the list at Karnak, 2 at Abydos, and the one at Saqqara lists the priest Tenrivi, right? It says here, the province of the Old Kingdom annals is unknown, surviving as the Palermo stone. The differences between the annals and Manetho are great. Okay, the New Kingdom lists are each selective in their listings. That of Seti I, for example, lists 76 kings from dynasties 1 to dynasties 19, omitting the Hyksos rulers and those associated with the heretic Akhenaten. So now, even with the king's list that he used to get his data system from, the records he had did include Akhenaten, and none of the Hyksos kings from the 15th and 18th dynasty. Why are these people exiling these individuals out? That doesn't sound like order, truth, and justice, right? If you keep reading, it says here the Saqqara list contemporaneous with Ramses II has 58 names with similar omissions. If Manetho used these lists at all, he would have been unable to get all of his information from them alone due to the selective nature of the records. Thus, how Manetho transcribed these names varies, and as such, we cannot reconstruct the original Egyptian forms of the names. Again, inconsistencies, omissions, not knowing the dating and the time causes a record that cannot be 100% reliable. Can it be a good base for us to get an idea of who the ruler in the suits was? Of course. But is it 100% reliable? No, it's not. As you can see, some people were just X'd out. Some people just wasn't added. Sometimes they had fragments. They didn't even have the full thing. Understand the reason why I'm showing you guys this, okay? So let's move forward. The Turin's King's List, right? This is what it looks like here. It's actually in the museum, right? Look at the Turin case. The Turin's King's List, also known as the Turin Royal Canon, is an Egyptian hieratic papyrus thought to date from the reign of the Pharaoh Ramses II, now in the Egyptian Museum in Turin. The papyrus is the most extensive list available of kings compiled by the Egyptians and is the basis for most chronology before the reign of Ramses II. The papyrus is believed to date from the reign of Ramses II during the middle of the New Kingdom or the 19th dynasty. The beginning and ending of the list are now lost. There is no introduction, and the list does not continue after the 19th dynasty. The composition may thus have occurred at any subsequent time from the reign of Ramses II to as late as the 20th dynasty. The papyrus was originally a tax roll, but on its back is written a list of the rulers of Egypt, including mythical kings such as gods, demigods, and spirits, as well as human kings. It says, despite attempts at reconstruction, approximately 50% of the papyrus remains missing. The Saqqara tablet, I'm going through all the kings lists, right? This is what it looks like here. This is a rendition of it, all right? This is the Saqqara tablet now in the Egyptian Museum. It's an ancient stone engraving which features a list of Egyptian pharaohs surviving from the Ramessean period. It was found during the 1861 in Egypt in Saqqara in the tomb of Tenrai, an official of the Pharaoh Ramses II. The inscription lists 58 kings up into Ramses II in reverse chronological order, omitting rulers from the second intermediate period, the Hyksos, and those rulers who had been close to the heretic Akhenaten. It says the name of which only 47 survive are damaged badly. Inaccuracies abound. The chronology is correct only for the kings of the dynasty, the 12th dynasty. Again, more inconsistencies, right? The last one, the Karnak Kings list, right? The Karnak Kings list is a list of early Egyptian kings engraved in stone. Was located in the southwest corner of the festival hall of Thutmose III, in the middle of the precinct of Amun-Re and the Karnak temple complex in Manan Luxor, which was also known as Thebes, right? Egypt, Memphis, I'm sorry. Composed during the reign of Thutmose III, it is listed 61 kings, beginning with Seneferu from Egypt's Old Kingdom. Only the names of 39 kings are still legible. It is not a complete list of the Egyptian pharaohs, as other kings are known from other ancient lists, but this list is valuable as it contains the names of kings from the first and second intermediate periods, which are omitted in most other kings lists. So now you have to do textual criticism and look at these tablets, these war reliefs, and these papyruses to try to understand who was ruling, who didn't rule, why some people were included here, why some people were restricted here, because all of these lists are inconsistent. None of them agree entirely with each other. Therefore, we cannot even know all of the Nusuts that actually ruled. If you look at any kind of modern reconstruction of the king's list, there's also question marks and certain periods that we just don't know. So if we don't know about them, we can't find their bodies. So let's say that they're in one king's list and we can't find the body. Are we going to say because we can't find the body, these people didn't exist? No, we can't do that because these scribes were part of the priesthood and it was their job to document this information. You see where I'm going at? Y'all following me? All right. Now, case for Israel, right? I'm going to go to maybe about 2 slides of this and we're going to break for about 15 minutes. But now we get into the case for Israel. So before I had to get to the case for Israel, I had to build up a climax before we get to this point. Because this is the crux of the presentation. What you saw prior to that is it's trying to show you some things in the Kemetic Kings list in regards to, is it an African tradition to dig up bodies? Was it ma'at to disturb the deceased? How did indigenous people feel when these European archaeologists were saying, listen, let's go into the tombs? The curses that was written, the way the tombs were created with slab walls to prevent people from getting in. We know that archaeology is doing something that's counterproductive to what the initial Nusuts intended. Yes?
Bloodline compromised with other tribes or other people married into the bloodline?
Yes, and a lot of that was
out because they weren't.
Yes, and a lot of that happened. But you got to look at a map of ancient Kemet. You have upper and you have lower, right? Upper is to the south and lower is to the north. And there's different nomes or cities or different areas that went all along the Nile. And in different areas, you had different cosmogonies on how the world began, different deities that they upheld, and then you had different tribes of people of different ethnicities that were there living in ancient Kemet. So some of them were intermarrying into the royal bloodline. Then when you get to the Ptolemaic period, you had some of the Europeans, the Grecians coming in, mixing in with the bloodline. This is why now they claim fame to ancient Kemet because they mingled with the bloodline. And if you see, anybody seen that movie, Exodus, Gods and Kings? That was a horrible movie. But anyway, it was an interesting movie, but it was just really hard. It was wholly whitewashed. Everything in it was just an embellishment of the truth. But the point is, everybody in it was white. What? And this is the projection that they're trying to give to the audience, because when they mingled, when the Greeks mingled into the bloodline, right? You had heard of Cleopatra, anybody heard of Cleopatra here, Mark Antony? When they mingled into the bloodline, now they said, now we can claim fame to the ancestors as ours. And this is what they give to the public, which is not African at all. That's dishonest and disingenuous, right?
Because even in the hieroglyphics, they're left out.
Yes.
A lot of them, because
Yes.
it couldn't be true.
There you go.
Because they're not the, what do you call it, the original bloodline.
There you go. There you go. And
Even if they
even,
married into it, they could not be.
yes, even when you had the Hyksos rulers who were Asiatics that was ruling in ancient Kemet from the 15th dynasty to the 18th dynasty when they was kicked out by Ahmose I, these were considered illegitimate kings because they were not from the same bloodline as the Cometians that lived in the land. See? So everything that I showed you are things that you probably never heard before because it's not being publicized. My thing is, I love the Kemetic culture. I love the history. I love the knowledge. That stuff is great. Issue I have was when people sensationalize or romanticize and put a smoke screen over the pitfalls and the inconsistencies that existed. Right? I'm the total picture. You understand? So I'm going to go through about 2 or 3 slides here, then we're going to break. The second part is called the case for Israel. So now this made a great case for ancient Kemet, to get you to understand some things. Now we're going to look at the case for Israel, right? Now, what does the biblical scripture say about handling dead bodies? Leviticus 21:10 says, the priest who is the highest among his brothers, on whose head the anointing oil has been poured, and who has been consecrated to wear the garments, shall not uncover his head, nor tear his clothes, nor shall he approach any dead person, nor defile himself even for his father or his mother. You see how serious that is? Numbers 9:6. But some of them could not celebrate the Passover on the day because they were ceremonially unclean on account of a dead body. Numbers 19:11. Whoever touches a human corpse will be unclean for 7 days. They must purify themselves with water on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day they will be clean. But if they do not purify themselves on the 3rd and 7th day, they will not be clean. So this is their perception from a Hebrew Israelite standpoint on how they treated dead bodies. It was a very serious manner. And if you were to come across a dead body and interface with it, you were unclean and you was kept out the camp. So they had to have people specifically designed to handle dead bodies, go through a ritual, be cleansed, and then they left the bodies alone, because anytime you went and interacted with a dead body, guess what? You would be unclean. Okay? So let's move forward. Now, rock-cut tombs. So we see that in ancient Kemet, we had mastabas, we had pyramids, we had burial mounds. That was their method of burying their dead, right? Mostly the kings, the suit, the nobility. In ancient Israel, they made rock-cut tombs. So they had their graves that was cut or hewn into a cliff or a rock. And then they would make their burials there for their bodies, all right? So here it says, hundreds of rock-cut tombs were constructed in Israel in ancient times. They were cut into the rock, sometimes with elaborate facets and multiple burial chambers. Some are freestanding, but most are caves. Each tomb typically belonged to a single wealthy family. It says here, bodies were laid out on stone benches. After a generation, the bones were moved to a bone chamber or later into ossuaries, and the benches used for new burials. Rock tombs were the province of the wealthy. The common people were buried in the ground. It says the tombs date from several periods. The early Canaanite cut rock tombs date from the 3100 to 2900 BCE, but the custom had lapsed a millennium before the earliest Israelite tombs, which date to the 9th century BCE in Jerusalem. There are a great many Jewish tombs dating to the Second Temple period and others in the late Roman or early Byzantine period. A number of rock-cut tombs are mentioned in the Bible. The first was purchased by Abraham for Sarah from Ephraim the Hittite, right? Genesis 23:20. Traditionally, this tomb, which may have been either a rock-cut or a natural cave, is identified with the cave of the patriarchs. And I'm going to show you this, right? It says, according to very old traditions, Abraham, Rebekah, Isaac, Jacob, and Leah were also buried there. Genesis 25:9, Genesis 49:29 to 32. All right? In Acts 7:16, it is said that there, Jacob and his family bodies were brought back to Shechem and placed in the tomb that Abraham had bought for the sons of Hamor of Shechem for a certain sum of money. All right? Mentions of rock-cut tombs are also found in Judges, Samuel, 2 Kings. It's all over the place. So this is the method that they used to bury their dead, and these places are still there. Don't let anybody tell you there's no tombs or no graves for Israel. They're still there, and I'm going to show it to you. Right? What is an ossuary? Does anybody know what an ossuary is? This is an example of one in the right hand. It's also called a sarcophagus. Right? You know what a sarcophagus is?
It's a tomb.
All right, and what's normally housed in there?
A body.
No. Close. It's too small for a body.
Oh,
the
artifact.
No. Artifacts, yes. What else? Close. You said body, ashes. What else? Bones.
Oh, bone.
So it was a custom that anytime somebody died in ancient Israel, they would let them die, they would bury them, and after a year, they would go collect their bones and put them in an ossuary.
How many years does it take for
The body to decompose? It depends on the temperature, the soil that you're burying in the ground. But typically, their custom was they waited a year. And after a year, the body was fully decomposed. They would exhume it because you can't touch a dead body. But the bones you can take. You're not unclean if you touch the bones. You just can't touch a body. So that's why they didn't preserve their ancestors, right? Because they wanted to have something that they can take with them in the event that they lose access to the land. You still have your ancestors with you. So that's what an ossuary is. They would use this box to keep artifacts from the dead and also the bones after they dug them up after a year's time, and they would collect them here and they would keep them either within the family, just like when people get a family member cremated. You know, you put the ashes in an urn and then you keep it with you. they were doing the same thing. This was their methodology of doing it, okay? So ossuary is a chest, box, building, well, or site made to serve as the final resting place of human skeletal remains. They are frequently used where burial space is scarce. A body is first buried in a temporary grave, and after some years, the skeletal remains are removed and placed in an ossuary. The greatly reduced space taken up by an ossuary means that it is possible to store the remains of many more people in a single tomb than if the original coffins were left as is. During the time of the Second Temple, Jewish burial customs included primary burials in burial caves, followed by secondary burials in ossuaries, placed in smaller niches of the burial caves. Some of the limestone ossuaries that have been discovered, particularly around the Jerusalem area, include intricate geometrical patterns and inscriptions identifying the deceased. Among the best-known Jewish ossuaries of this period are an ossuary inscribed Simon the Temple Builder in the collection of the Israel Museum, another inscribed Elisheba, wife of Tarfon, one inscribed Yehohanan ben Hakol. It says that contain an iron nail in the heel bone suggesting crucifixion. Then another inscribed James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus, the authenticity of which is opposed by some and strongly supported by others. So now you have an example of how ossuaries were used after they was buried. They dig up the bodies and put it in bones, and then they would keep it with them. And we have several examples of them that you can see now in museums. Right? This is the ossuary reference in the scripture, the Bible itself. Exodus 13:9 says, Moses took the bones of Joseph with him because Joseph, this is when the Israelites were exiting out of ancient Kemet, Joseph had made the Israelites swear an oath. He had said, God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up with you from this place. So they never left their ancestors in a particular grave. They would dig them up after a year, a couple of years, take the bones, put it in an ossuary, and take it with them. And they would keep it, okay? Now, the history of Israelite tombs. Let me see which slide this is so I can give you a quick break. All right, I got one or two more left, and I'm going to give you a quick break. Okay, now, what this is showing you here is the history of Israelite tombs. Because people always ask, where's the tombs? Where's the burial sites? Like they don't exist, but they do exist. I don't think I found any Hebrew Israelite brothers that have actually presented what I'm about to show you. I have not seen them show it. My thing is, because I interface with people in the Black conscious community, I think that if somebody has a sincere inquiry about something, it is my objective as a teacher to provide them the information. And one of the things that I get from the Kemetic community is, where's the bodies? Where's the graves? So now I'm showing it to them. And these things exist. They can go to Israel now and they can check it out themselves. But I don't know, maybe y'all have seen other brothers in the Hebrew Israelite community that have taught this stuff. I've never seen them touch on the subject. So I felt like, is there a reason why? Is it because they see it as being not, insignificant? My thing is that this is going to help quell a lot of the contention between both groups. I'm going to give you guys what you want, and that way you'll be sufficed and we can move forward and stop talking about burial sites and talk about how we're going to fix our community. You understand what I'm saying? So that's really the purpose of this teaching, is to quell a lot of these arguments so we can move forward and build. You understand what I'm saying? Unify. All right? I'm going to read some of this for you. Not too much. There's a lot of information in here. During the First Temple period, one of the major collections of rock-cut tombs in Israel is the necropolis of the ancient kingdom of Judah, which had its capital in Jerusalem. These were cut between the 9th and 7th centuries BCE. The necropolis is located on a rocky ridge across the Kidron Valley from the city. The Arab village of Silwan was later built atop the necropolis. So now you had where the kings were buried, and then when the Arabs came in with Islam, they built a city on top of that necropolis. All right? Now this is very important that I'm telling you this. All right? It says here, although the existence of ancient tombs in the village of Silwan had been known since the 19th century, the first careful survey was not performed until 1968. Charles Warren, who was thwarted in his efforts to carry out a full survey of the tombs, and some of which villages were living, attributed this to the hostile nature of the villagers, whom he described as a lawless sect. Why are they so hostile about a European coming in and digging up bones? See, you see the same thing in ancient Kemet. The indigenous people say, yo, we don't want to help you with that because you're being mad disrespectful. As we say colloquially, mad disrespectful. People that know me know I use that term a lot. Mad disrespectful, we're not going to assist you. Now, when this archaeologist attempted to do this, the people was like, whoa, we're not letting you do this. Nah, this is sacrilegious. So he fought a lot of contention, right? All of the tombs were long since emptied and their contents removed, because we saw the ossuaries, right? So a lot of the times the tomb was there, the burial site was there, they would take the bones, put it in a box, and they would take it with them, right? And it says a great deal of destruction was done to the tombs over the centuries by quarrying and by their conversion for use as both housing, both by monks in the Byzantine period, when some were used as churches. That's mad disrespectful. How you take somebody's grave where they're buried and turn it into a church? Who does that? This is during the Byzantine period where you have Christianity that was taken over at that time. These were Europeans, right? And it says, and later by Muslim villages. So some of the villagers who were homeless, just like today, some homeless people will find an abandoned building to live in, tombs, because they had no other place to go and they needed shelter. That I can understand. But if you're setting up shop and doing religious ceremonies and stuff over top somebody's grave whose ancestors there, that's not African, that's not Hebrew Israelite, that's nothing indigenous or aboriginal. It says when an Arab village was built, tombs were destroyed, incorporated in houses, or turned into water cisterns and sewage dumps. The necropolis or ancient cemetery is an archaeological site of major significance. It contains 50 rock-cut tombs of distinguished caliber, assumed to be the burial places of the highest-ranking officials of the Judean kingdom. Tomb inscriptions are in Hebrew. The most famous of the ancient rock-cut tombs and the Silwan is the finely carved monolith known as the monolith of Silwan. And the rest of this, I'll get you some more information about that. And this is just so y'all can understand that these things existed, but also know the history behind these things that you're looking at. Now, this part right here, next slide, I'm gonna break y'all, but y'all have to understand the Islamic conquest of Palestine. Because as you can see in the previous slide, we saw that when the Arabs came in, they built a city on top of the necropolis. Some of the villagers were living in the tombs. But if you don't understand the Islamic presence in Palestine, then you will not understand why there's such an uproar and resistance towards European archaeologists coming and digging up bodies. You have to understand the presence of Islam. This is very, very important. My brother back there, Morris brother right there, you're familiar with the history of Islam coming into Palestine, right? He's a sheikh, so he should know this, right? This part right here is very important because this is going to answer about the tombs. So I'm gonna let y'all break from here. So we're gonna take a 15-minute break. I'm gonna get back into this. Is everybody okay? Hope I'm not overloading your information. At the end of this, I'm gonna give y'all a quick question and answer. That way, if you have any questions, you can ask it. But please hold off your questions until the end, and I promise I'm gonna answer as many questions as I can. I'm gonna finish up here. Again, we stopped at the Islamic conquest of Palestine. So I want to get into this and just show you all the Islamic element in regards to the burials, because we have to understand what does this have to do with the burials, right? So let me, oh wow, press forward. Okay, here we go. Islamic conquest of Palestine. So let's move forward, right? Now, the Muslim history in the region of Palestine began in the 630s during the Great Muslim Conquest. The Roman reign of Palestine was conquered by the Muslim armies of the Caliphate, the Islamic Empire under Caliph Umar. It says Muslim presence in the region has since continued to develop to the present time for nearly 1400 years. Throughout the majority of the aforementioned era, a Muslim rule existed in the region of Palestine, except for the Crusader rule in the region 1099 to 1291, and except for the period of the modern state of Israel, 1948 onwards, in which, following the 1948 Palestinian War, led to the creation of the state of Israel and Israeli sovereign power, majority of the territories of the British Mandate for Palestine. The Muslim conquest of the 7th century began a long and gradual process of Islamization of many nations in the Middle East, Central Asia, and North African region. This gradual process, which began immediately as a result of the formation of the Muslim Empire, it says, lasted several hundred years. In addition, in the Middle East region and the region of Palestine in particular, began a gradual process which lasted several centuries, in which the indigenous peoples in various regions who until then spoke mostly Greek, Aramaic, Syriac, Coptic, and Berber began adopting the Arabic language and the culture associated with it. As a result, through time, many of the indigenous people merged with the Arab tribes, and as a result, a vast region, which included the historic region of Palestine, became dominated by the Arabic language and the Arab culture. Following the Muslim conquest of the region of Palestine, the Caliphate decided to construct a grand mosque on the holy site of the Jewish temple ruins, keep that in mind, in the old city of Jerusalem. As a result, the Caliphate constructed the Al-Aqsa Mosque. In addition, during that time, various other Muslim structures were constructed throughout the region of Palestine. Keep that in mind. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is considered nowadays the world's oldest Islamic building still in use. All right, what is the Islamic perspective on excavation? Now we see that in the 7th century, Islam and the Arabs came into Palestine and just locked it down, set up shop. And now we want to know, how do they feel about excavations? Maybe they're okay with it, maybe they're not. Well, let's see. A number of archaeological excavations at the Temple Mount, remember that mosque that was created there, a celebrated and contentious religious site in the old city of Jerusalem, have taken place over the last 150 years. They were first undertaken by the British Royal Engineers in the 1870s. How come all of these noted archaeological digs always starts with Europeans? British, French, what? Okay, as you can see, no indigenous people are doing this. Okay, it says since Israel took control of the old city in 1967, archaeological excavations in the vicinity of the mount have been undertaken by Israel and the Waqf. It says both excavations have been controversial and criticized. Israeli excavations have also sparked demonstrations and objections in the Muslim world. Due to the extreme political sensitivity of the site, few archaeological excavations have been conducted on the Temple Mount itself. Protests commonly occur whenever archaeologists conduct projects on or near the mountain. Now, I have to give Islam some props, because when those Europeans go in to dig, they said, we're going to give you a hell of a time before you accomplish that. That's real right there. And this is what we should be doing in ancient Kemet. But yet we celebrate the European who wants all of these bones in these bodies that's not African. Let's move forward. All right. Here's an article from BBC News. Israel to delay work at the holy site. Controversial construction work near the holiest site for Muslims and Jews in Jerusalem as we put off to allow public consultation, officials say. The excavations have angered Muslims across the world. The Arab League called it a criminal attack and has asked the UN to intervene. How come the officials in ancient Kemet are not doing that? Or the people indigenous, why are they not doing that? There's a reason for that, right? Because remember, who is in control of Egypt now? The Arabs, right? Islam, the Islamic State. Did they have respect for the ancient commissions?
No.
So this would make sense why they will allow them to dig there, but not at their sites. That makes sense, right? Not in their culture. It says only an announcement from the Israeli government ordering to halt all work once and for all and authorizing the Waqf, the Islamic endowment authorities, to embark on the necessary repair work will satisfy us, said the Mufti of Jerusalem, Sheikh Mohammed. So now the Sheikh is saying, yo, unless y'all call us off, you're going to get hell from us. Again, I respect that. That's real. That's how you honor your ancestors. Y'all feel me? Let's move forward. Right? What is the Quran views on Egypt? Right? It says here, this is from Surah 7:137, and since you're a Sheikh, you could probably confirm what I'm saying here. Okay? It says, and we cause the people who have been oppressed to inherit the eastern regions of the land and the western ones which we had blessed. And the good word of the Lord was fulfilled for the children of Israel because of what they had patiently endured. And we destroyed all the Pharaoh and his people were producing and what they had been building. So Allah is saying that we have destroyed, not literally destroyed, but they have been consumed because Islam has consumed ancient Egypt. Are you following me? This is important now. Let's move forward. Now, what are the Islamic views on the exhumation of dead bodies? So first we see the people beefing, but why are they beefing? Is there a codified system or law that dictates why they're in uproar against these excavations, right? So now, I don't know if anybody ever knows who Al-Qawi is. This is a book that he wrote called Islamic Laws. One of his phrases in there is the laws on cleanliness, prayers, fasting, hajj, transactions, marriage, and other topics according to the Risala, Ayatollah Saeed Abul Kazim Al-Qawi. Author is the person I just mentioned. The translator is Muhammad Faisal Haq. The publisher is Islamic Seminary Publications. So what they did was they looked through the hadith. This teacher, Sheikh, looked through the hadith and looked through the Quran and created a codified system on how do we deal with dead bodies, right? So if you want to know why there's such an uproar in regards to the excavations, you have to study his work, all right? Now, who this individual is, he's one of the most influential 12 Shia Islamic scholars and the predecessor of Ali al-Sistani. He was the spiritual leader of much of the Shia world until his death in 1942. Now, what are some of the things that are codified in this book that may deal with dead bodies, right? If you look at Code 89, it says the dead body of a human being is impure. And remember, we look in Hebraic thought, and anything that was impure that you touched, it made you impure, right? Law 527 says if a person touches the dead body of a human being which has become cold and has not been bathed, it says he should take a bath, whether he touches the dead body during sleep or when awake, and whether he does so voluntarily or involuntarily. So much as that even if his nail or bone touches the nail or bone of a dead body, he should take a bath. Bath is not, however, obligatory if one touches the dead body of an animal. Code 624 says, if it is feared that the enemy may dig the grave and exhume the dead body and amputate his ears or nose or other limbs, it should be lowered into water if possible, as stated in the foregoing article. 648 says, it is unlawful to open the grave of a Muslim. 649 says, opening the graves is unlawful in the case of descendants of imams, martyrs, or scholars, or even pious persons. 650 says, opening the grave of a dead body, it says, it is not unlawful unless you have these cases, which says, when a dead body has been buried in a usurped land, and the owner of the land is not willing to let it remain there. That means if I purchase land, and your ancestors buried there, and I'm like, listen, it's my land now you're allowed to go and touch the dead body, and take it out the ground, right? When the shroud of the dead body or anything buried with it has been usurped and the owner of the thing is in question, is not willing to let it remain in the grave. When the opening of the grave does not amount to disrespect of the dead person. If I'm digging in there, taking a body out, taking your artifacts out, that's disrespecting the dead person. And it transpires that he was buried without bathing or shrouding, or the bathing performed was void, or he was not shrouded according to religious orders, or was not made to lie in the grave facing the Qibla. This is very, very important because this explains why there's such an uproar. Again, it goes on and says, when it is necessary to inspect the body of the dead person to prove some rights, as far as if I have an inheritance from a family member, the only way I can prove it is that I have to dig them up to prove it. In those cases, you're allowed to, but you're impure, and there's a right that you go to so you can be clean. It says, when a dead body of a Muslim has been buried at a place which is against his status, when the grave is open for a legal purpose, which is more important, open it up to dig up dead bodies for archaeology and science is not a legal reason to do it. When it is feared that a wild beast would tear up the corpse, we know there's a dog or an animal that digs into the ground to eat these dead bodies, now we have permission to take it and remove it. None of this stuff sounds like science. It's just common sense in regards to your inheritance, in regards to preserving the dead. This is why the Muslim world is not accepting these archaeologists coming in trying to dig up bodies. All right, let's move forward. Now, a corpse therefore deserves a degree of dignity with a timely burial, which the action of the raven clearly depicted. All right, this is in the Quran. At the time of the death, the angels that are tasked to remove the soul take the soul without fail, and the body almost immediately starts to disintegrate. A simple question to ask is, why would a decaying body need to be prepared and accomplished successfully decomposed? It is clear from a historic study of this subject that many civilizations have sought to protect the body for a manner of a reason in some form or another. One is respect for the physical remains. Two is to bring closure to the deceased family and loved ones. Three is a belief in the afterlife, where the preparation of the body is seen as a necessary step in the process to reach the afterlife. Practical reasons such as to stop the rotting odor of the deceased for reaching the surface. So these are common sense reasons why you would tamper with or why you would interface with a dead body. Nothing to do with science, nothing to do with archaeology, because the people didn't have a concept of that. It didn't exist in the indigenous nature of the people that lived it. Are y'all following? This is very, very important. Now, if we look at the prophets and messengers, if we know all of that about Islam, we know that Islam has its codified law on how to interface with dead bodies, why you should do it, why there's such an uproar when these Europeans want to come in and exhume bodies and take artifacts. And we look to see who did they revere. That's similar in the Tanakh. Adam, Enoch, Ezra, Noah, Hud. I had all the references in the Sharia law, and which book it's in as well, what the prophet number is, and the number that's here tells you what part of the Quran that they've been being discussed in. These are all their prophets. Noah, Hud, Saleh, Abraham, Lot, Ishmael, Isaac, Yaakov, Yosef, Yeshua, Jethro, Moses, Aaron, Ezekiel, David, Samuel, Solomon, Elijah, Jonah, Zechariah. These are all people that are venerated in whose culture? Islam. So if there's a burial site for these people, and it is in Islamic territory, and they said these are their ancestors, do you think they're going to let some Europeans run up in there and dig these people out? That's not going to happen. You saw the sheik said, listen, we're going to continue to give y'all hell if y'all think you'll come and dig up some bodies. We're not letting y'all do that. That's not in our culture for you to do that. That's a European thing. We don't do that here, all right? Now, is there a precedent in biblical scripture to leave the tombs of patriarchs and prophets undisturbed? Is it in the Bible? Is it in Tanakh? Sure it is. 2 Kings 23:17 says, the king asks, what is that tombstone I see? The people of the city said, it marks the tomb of the man of God who came from Judah and pronounced against the altar of Bethel the very things you have done to it. And the king says, leave it alone. Don't let anyone disturb his bones. So they spared his bones and those of the prophet who had come from Samaria. In the text itself, it gives you a precedence that if somebody's revered as a prophet, you do not touch their grave. And Ma'at, when the Nasuts went through their rites of passage in the afterlife, they said, I have not disrespected the deceased. You see how synonymous this is? So where's this idea at that we want to dig up dead bodies? We want to take artifacts. It's not from these cultures. These people didn't believe in that. The European does, because he doesn't have any respect for that. That's not his ancestors. He just wants to rob it for Jews. Do you know how much money on the black market that you can make from all these excavations? Because before these things ended up in museums, they were on the black market being sold for millions of dollars. If you telling me that I can find some artifact with some little writing on it, and I can sell it on the black market for $1 million, you don't think that's going to tell me that maybe I want to go and dig some bodies up, dig some artifacts up, because it's a lucrative business? It has nothing to do with trying to show people what the history is. It's making money and using the name of science to cover it up. Y'all following me? Alright. Now, let's get into the tombs. You know, people say, hey, there's no Hebrew Israelite tombs. They don't exist. Where the burial sites at? Okay. Now I gotta give it to y'all. Now we're about to see. As you can see, the tomb of Noah. Here is a mountain that's built right above the tomb of Noah. It's right here at Nekhav Hivan, if I'm saying it right. This is in Turkey, and this is where this site actually is. Because traditionally, this is where they believe that he was buried, right? So if we go to it, it says here, the tomb of the prophet Noah is a mausoleum in the territory of Konan Gala, which is the old fortress, in the southern part of Nakhan-Hivian, Azerbaijan. Architecture of the construction is dated from the 8th century. According to the Brakhaus and Ephron Encyclopedia Dictionary, some Persian historians date the construction of the mausoleum in 1539 BCE. It says the mausoleum was restored in 2006. The tomb consists of remains of a lower story of a formal temple. There is a ladder leading to the burial vault. There is a stone column in the middle of the vault. According to the legend, relics of Noah are under this column. A portrait describing the mausoleum of Noah 100 years ago from now, painted by Barus Kangarli, is saved in the National Art Museum of Azerbaijan. So if you go there to this location, you will see the burial site of Noah. It's there. But why are you not allowed to dig there? Islam. See, Islam, they protect their ancestors, man. I rock with them. They protect their ancestors, right? The Cave of the Patriarchs. Wonder who's buried there. This site exists. When people say, where's the burial sites? Do they not research? They're there. Let's see where this is at. Situated beneath the Saladin-era mosque, converted from a large rectangular Herodian-era structure, the series of subterranean chambers is located in the heart of the old city of Hebron and the Hebron Hills. According to tradition that has been associated with the book of Genesis and the Quran, the cave and adjoining field were purchased by Abraham as a burial plot. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, and Leah, considered the patriarchs and matriarchs of Jewish people, were all believed to be buried there. The only matriarch missing is Rachel, who is believed to be buried near Bethlehem. It says where she died in childbirth. The Arabic name of the complex reflects the prominence given to Abraham, revered by Muslims as a Quranic prophet and patriarch through Ishmael. Outside biblical and Quranic sources, there are a number of legends and traditions associated with the cave. Genesis 25:7, Abraham lived 175 years. Then Abraham breathed his last breath and died at a good old age, an old man and full of years, and he was gathered to his people. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, and the field of Ephraim, son of Zohar the Hittite, the field Abraham had bought from the Hittites. There Abraham was buried with his wife Sarah. Genesis 35:28, now the days of Isaac were 180 years. Isaac breathed his last breath and died, and was gathered to his people, and an old man of ripe age, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. 49 says, Genesis 49:29 says, then he gave these instructions. This is Jacob. I'm about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave of the field of Ephraim the Hittite, the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre in Canaan, which Abraham bought along with the field as a burial place from Ephraim the Hittite. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave in it were bought from the Hittites. It's there. If you want to see it, here's a picture of it right there. It's enclosed over a cave that you can go in and you can look at. Now, are you allowed to excavate there? They don't let that rock. You're not going to disrespect Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Ishmael. Nah, that's not going to rock in the Arab world. So let's move forward. Next is the tomb of the matriarchs. It's Tiberias right here. This is what it looks like here. This is the burial site. If you want to go there right now, this exists. I'm giving images of it, right? The tomb of the matriarchs in Tiberias, Israel, is a traditional burial place of several biblical women. Bilhah, handmaid of Rachel, Zilpah, handmaid of Leah, Jochebed, mother of Moses, Zipporah, wife of Moses, Elisheba, wife of Aaron, Abigail, one of King David's wives. The marble structure beside a modern apartment building block is surrounded by a stone wall. So that site has been preserved there as a historical site, and there's like an apartment complex right over there. So people are actually looking at this thing almost every day, but it exists, it's there. If you want to go there to double check it, give you a location, it's there, right? Next, the tomb of Rachel. Where is she buried at? I have a map here that indicates where it's at, and this is a photo of what it looks like. It says, Rachel's tomb, also known since the 1990s as the Bilal bin Rabah Mosque to Muslims, and UNESCO is the name given to the small religious building encased in concrete revered by Jews, Christians, and Muslims. The tomb is located within a Muslim cemetery in a walled enclave lining into the outskirts of Bethlehem, 460 meters south of Jerusalem's municipal boundary in the West Bank. The West Bank is controlled by who? Arabs, Muslims, right? This is where all the fighting is going on, Gaza Strip, West Bank. And Genesis 35:19 says, so Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephraim, that is Bethlehem. So the scriptural text is referencing what's actually taking place in real life. We have the burial site. The tomb of Joseph. See this here? That's the tomb right there. This is the location where it's at. It's there. You can go there today and see it. It says here, Joseph's tomb is a funerary monument located at the eastern entrance to the valley that separates Mount Gerizim and Abal, 325 yards northwest of Jacob's Well, on the outskirts of the West Bank city of Nablus, near Tel Balata. It says the site of the biblical Shechem. It says one biblical tradition identifies the general area of Shechem as the resting place of the biblical patriarch Joseph and his two sons Ephraim and Manasseh. Joshua 24:32 says, and Joseph's bones, remember they put it in the ossuary, which the Israelites had brought up from Egypt, this is why it's not there, were buried in Shechem, exactly where we just stated that it is, and the tract of the land that Jacob bought for 100 pieces of silver from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. This became the inheritance of Joseph's descendants. We got the biblical claim, we got the actual site. The tomb of Jethro. Jethro was the father-in-law of Moshe. He was a Midianite high priest, right? We have here, and Hittin is the location of it. This is what it looks like here. Very elaborate on tombs. It's right there. Let's get some information about it. It says that the tomb of Jethro is a religious shrine near Kafar Zettim and the depopulated Arab village of Hittin, not far from Tiberias, Israel, where the tomb of the Islamic prophet Shayuab, the biblical Jethro, is believed to be located. It says Nabi Shayub, the prophet Jethro, was an object of traditional veneration by Druze and Sunni Muslims throughout Palestine. The shrine figured down to the Israeli-Arab War of 1948 as a place where both Sunni Muslims and Druze took vows and made pilgrimage. After the 1948 war, Israel placed the maqam or shrine under exclusive Jewish care. A central figure in the Jewish religion, the tomb of Nabi Shayuab, has been a site of annual pilgrimage for the Jewish for centuries. Shrines dedicated to Nabi Shayuab are common throughout the greater Syria region. In the final years of the British mandate in Palestine, a dispute had raged over the shrine between the Sunni and Druze communities. On the establishment of Israel in 1948, the Tarif family applied for the Maqam to be registered a Jewish Waqf. Israel complied in part to promote the separation of the Jews from the other Muslim communities. So custodianship of the tomb was transferred to the Druze community by the Israeli authorities. Sunni Muslims have largely ceased their pilgrimage to this place because there's too much contention here. Again, you can go see the tomb of Jethro. It's there. What about the tomb of Aaron? Is it there? Yeah, I'm giving you pictures right here. This is what it looked like inside the cave, and this is the site right here. It's there. This is on the map where it's at. Let's get some information on it. The tomb of Aaron is the name of the burial place of Aaron, the brother of Moses. At a location near Petra in Jordan, Aaron, known as Haran in Arabic, died and was buried in Jabal Haran on Aaron's mountain near Petra in Jordan. A mosque was built at the Jordanian location in the 14th century. So they built a mosque on top of this burial site. Again, it's there. Numbers 20 and 28 says, Moses removed Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar. It says, and Aaron died there on top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. Move forward. What about the burial site of Moshe? Does that exist? There's an image of it right there. Mount Nebo is an elevated ridge in Jordan, approximately 817 meters above sea level, mentioned in the Bible as the place where Moses was granted a view of the Promised Land. The view from the summit provides a panorama of the Holy Land, and to the north, a more limited one of the valley of the River Jordan. The West Bank city of Jericho is usually visible from the summit, as is Jerusalem on a very clear day. According to tradition, Moses was buried on the mountain, although his place of burial is not specified. It says some Islamic traditions also stated the same, although there is a grave of Moses located at Maqam el-Nabi, south of Jericho, east of Jerusalem in the Judean wilderness. Scholars continue to dispute whether the mountain currently known as Nebo is the same as the mountain referred to in Deuteronomy. So now we have two different areas of burial sites where Moses could have been buried, and the reason why there's contention is because it's the way you interpret the text. It's not really clear, so they know specifically where he's at, but traditionally they believe that he's buried in one of those two places, and there's a burial site in each one of these places, and one of them has a mosque. It's there. You can go back and you can go research and you can see for yourself. Deuteronomy 34 says that Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord, and he buried him in the valley of the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor, but no man knows his burial place to this day. And if you look here, nobody really knows the burial place of him to this day. So that's very, very interesting. Let's move forward. What about the tomb of Joshua and Caleb? There's it right there. Tomb right here. It's right here on the map. I mean, this stuff is there. People can go and look at this stuff. Make pilgrimages to this place. It says, Timnath Heres or Timnath Serah was the town given to Yahshua in the Bible. He requested it, and the people gave it to him at the order of the Lord. He built up the town and lived in it. On his death, he was buried there. Jewish tradition also places the tomb of Caleb there. It was in the mountainous region of Ephraim, north of Mount Gaash. It says some identified a place with Kitzel Hadas, about 30 kilometers southwest of Shechem, located northwest of Adiyah. Joshua 24:29 says, after those things, Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110, and they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath Serah and the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gaash. According to the biblical claim, we have it here. It exists. It's there. Move forward. What about the tomb of Shamuel? It's right here. This is the tomb site. This is the burial place. This is the location right here. I mean, I'm going through all of these tombs. So for somebody to say this doesn't exist, it goes to show the lack of research that they did. This stuff is there, and it's easy to research. You can just Google it and find it. It says the tomb of Shamuel is the traditional burial site of the biblical Hebrew prophet Shamuel, atop a steep hill at an elevation of 908 meters above sea level. It is situated in the Palestinian villages of Naban, Samuel, and the West Bank, Arabs there, kilometers north of the Jerusalem neighborhood of Ramot. It says on the site is a building containing a mosque built in the 18th century that was formerly a church. The tomb itself is located in an underground chamber where a small synagogue is located. The Israeli Ministry of Tourism website states over time, practically every ancient Jewish traveler mentioned this place and its synagogue. 1 Samuel 25:1 says, now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him at his home in Ramah, and he's there now today. Then David moved down into the desert of Paran. What about the tomb of David? I mean, I'm giving you all these prophets. Anybody can go there today and see this. Do we have any evidence for the tomb of David? Of course we do. This is a panoramic view of where it's at. This is the actual inside of the tomb itself. This is something that they put there to honor him, right? But let's see if there's some kind of information on that. Maybe it's not there. Maybe it is. And the Biblical Archaeological Review, November-December 2012 issue, published at Cornell University website. It's T1. This is the designation for a burial site, just like you have KV 45, 62, 63 for the Valley of the Kings in ancient Kemet. You have T1 is the designation for the tombs in ancient Israel. 100 years ago, Raymond Weil excavated this site in the city of David and believed it to be the Judite king's tomb. Was he right? It's an article written by Jeffrey R. Zorn. 1 Kings 2:10 says, then David rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. So this article is investigating, is T1 David's tomb? Let's see. Right? A little bit of reading, but I'm going to read it. According to the Book of Kings, most of David's immediate successors down through Ahaz were also buried in the city of David. The city of David is 12 acres, is well established as the earliest settlement of Jerusalem and the extent of the city in David's time down through the next 250 years. It is a relatively small ridge south of today's Temple Mount. The city location was determined by the Gihon Spring, Jerusalem's only source of fresh water. The Gihon Spring also marks the commemoration of a remarkable 1,750-foot tunnel known as Hezekiah's Tunnel, which the Bible references and is still there today. It says that still carries the water of the spring to the other side of the city, where it emptied into the Shiloh pool. How the two teams of tunnelers working from either end managed to meet is still somewhat of a mystery. An even greater mystery is the winding course of the tunnel. If it had been cut in a straight line from the spring to the pool, it would have been 2/3 as long. One of the mysteries is the connection, and the connection is the strange semicircular loop and the southern half of the tunnel. Why did tunnelers make this seemingly unnecessary loop? In 1887, the famous French diplomat, Jerusalem savant and explorer Charles Clermont Ganneau suggested that this loop was an effort by the tunnelers to avoid an inadvertent disturbance of the burial grounds of the Davidic kings above the tunnel. I suggest everybody read this article. This is a great in-depth article. I just give you snippets of it, but it gives you in-depth everything that they did to excavate this tomb. And making this suggestion, Clermont Ganneau relied not only on general biblical descriptions placing a royal necropolis in the city of David, but also more specific references in the book of Nehemiah. When Nehemiah returned from the Babylonian exile in the middle of the 5th century BCE, he rebuilt or repaired the walls of Jerusalem with various teams of workers. It is possible from the text to follow roughly the progress of the rebuilding of the wall. At one point, a team is assigned to repair the fountain gate or spring gate. This is presumably the gate by which the Gihon Spring is located. It says the team also rebuilt the wall located near the pool of the King's Garden, which is south of the Gihon Spring and adjacent to the graves or tombs of David as far as the artificial pool. Nehemiah 8:16. From the context of the passage, it is clear that the royal necropolis was located at the southern end of the city, possibly within the southern loop of Hezekiah's tunnel. To test Clermont Ganneau's hypothesis, an archaeological excavation of the area was mounted in the early 20th century, funded by Baron Edmond de Rothschild and directed by the renowned French Egyptologist Raymond Weil. The only tombs Weil described with any specificity, indeed described at all, in his published reports are those he labeled T1 and T2, and there was also one called T3. So these are 3 tombs that they found. They are clearly the most prominent as well as the most interesting of his tombs that he discovered. Are T1 and T2 part of the royal necropolis, perhaps one of them the tomb of King David himself? Let's take a closer look. Why should we expect 10th and 9th century BCE tombs to look like tombs from the latter part of the 8th century and later? Instead of looking for comparisons at the end of the the end of the Iron Age, when the kingdom of Judah had reached its full maturity, we should more sensibly look for parallels with the elite royal burials from the beginning of the Iron Age, 12th century BCE, and the end of the preceding Bronze Age. It says here, the most striking feature of these early royal tombs and elite tombs is their relative simplicity. These tombs, in fact, are so simple that they would not likely have been recognized as royal tombs save for the contents and architectural contents. It It says here, for example, Elba and Syria, where we get the Ebla tablets, 2 royal tombs with first 2 plates dated to the 1800 BCE. The chambers lack symmetry and sophistication. Only their contents and locations below the palace signify the royal status. What does this mean? That means that these kings were not building these elaborate burial places even before the kings of Judah was on the scene, because they didn't want to make it obvious for people to go into their tombs and loot it and rob it. Okay? Now, at the conclusion of this is a lengthy article, but I'm going to jump down to the conclusion. The individuals including this, and this has been peer reviewed, I conclude that Wales T1 and T2 are more than probable, or very probable, the remains of the tombs of the Davidic dynasty. One final point. Why was David buried within the walls of Jerusalem? After all, Israelite laws concerning ritual purification dictated that anyone who touched the corpse, which we read earlier, or even the grave, became ritually impure until the proper ceremony was undertaken, in Numbers 19. One possibility is that David and his successors were worried about the plundering of their tombs and the desecration of their remains. It says here, such a concern is well-founded as attested in Amos 2 and 1, where God promises to punish the Moabites for burning to lime the bones of the kings of Edom. Being buried inside the city added a layer of security, whether or not the burial site violated later Israelite law. Another possibility ties in with David's decision to make the Canaanite city of Jerusalem his capital. As a Bethlehemite, David was no doubt well acquainted with the trappings of power found in this nearby royal center. Since the area under his control included a mixed Israelite-Canaanite population, he chose Jerusalem, at least in part, as a sense of authority that would symbolize his power in a way recognizable to his non-Israelite subjects. Being buried in Jerusalem in a tomb similar to those used by other Bronze Age elites, not his family tomb in Bethlehem, was another way to symbolize his royal status among his Canaanite subjects. In any event, the Bible is clear and placed the royal necropolis within the city of David. The Bible makes a claim, archaeology confirms that claim, and we now have the tomb of King David. Simple as that. This right here is a legend of the actual excavation site. T1 is right here, T2 is right here, T3 is right here. This is where King David was buried, right here. Right? This is actual pictures of the actual cave itself where he was buried. Here's an image of the inside entering into the cave, and this is being actually into the cave. And when you lower it down, that's when you find different artifacts in there signifying that a person of royalty was buried in this location. So we have that too. What about the tomb of Absalom, who was also a king of Judah, right? Of Israel, right? It says here, the tomb of Absalom, also called Absalom's Pillar, is an ancient monumental rock-cut tomb with the canopial roof located in the Kidron Valley in Jerusalem. Although traditionally ascribed to Absalom, the rebellious son of King David of Israel, recent scholarship has attributed to the last 1st century when they actually saw the site itself. The tomb of Ezekiel was one of the prophets. Remember, all these are people that are revered in the Quran by Islam and by the Arabs, right? So the tomb of Ezekiel, do we have it? Ezekiel's tomb, located in Al-Kifil, Iraq, is believed by Jews and Christians to be the tomb of the biblical prophet Ezekiel. On the walls inside appears Hebrew script under a dome with medieval Islamic floral design, so they renovated it. Iraqi Jewry was once one of the largest and most prominent Jewish communities in the Middle East. Until the mid-20th century, up to 5,000 Jews used to come to the tomb during Passover. This site was protected under the control of Saddam Hussein. So one of the reasons why Saddam was probably knocked off is because he was protecting sites that were sacred to the people and did not allow archaeological digs. Interestingly enough, after his death, we have archaeology teams in there. Wow. All right, let's move forward, people. What about the tomb of the prophets Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi? Does it exist? No. Here's a picture of it right here. Right? It says here, the tomb of the prophets Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, Arabic for Kubar el-Anbiya, it says it's located on the upper slope of the Mount of Olives, Jerusalem. According to Jewish and Christian tradition, the catacomb is believed to be the burial place of Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, the last 3 Hebrew Bible prophets who are believed to have lived during the 5th to 6th century BCE. The chamber forms 2 concentric passages containing 38 burial niches. The entrance to the large rock-cut burial cave is on the western side, where a staircase descends, flanked on both sides by a stone balustrade, it says. It leads into a large circular central vault measuring 24 feet in diameter. From it, 2 parallel tunnels, 5 feet wide and 10 feet high, stretch some 20 yards through the rock. Right? What about the bones of John the Baptist? Now we're talking about bones, right? John the Baptist, one of the followers of an individual called Yeshua ben Yosef. Did we find the bones of him? I don't know. Let's see. John the Baptist's bones were found. This is from National Geographic News, June 19, 2012. Discovered in 2010 among the ruins of a Bulgarian church. The remains include 6 human bones. A knuckle bone from the right hand, a tooth, part of a cranium, a rib, and an ulna, or forearm bone. DNA and radiocarbon testing of collagen from the knuckle bone showed that the remains likely belong to the Middle Eastern man who lived in the 1st century AD, which fits the story of John the Baptist. According to the Bible, John was a cousin of Jesus Christ, so the finding means scientists might have DNA from a relative of the Christian Savior himself. We thought that since the Bulgarian church dates to the 5th century, this gives us a minimum age for the material, Hagar said, and we thought that perhaps these bones would be 4th or 5th century as well. But we were surprised when they turned out to be much older than that, said Hagar, whose work on the bones was funded in part by the National Geographic Society's Expedition Council. You can find this article in National Geographic, and we have the bones of John the Baptist. It's there. Tomb and bones of the Apostle Philip. Philip was one of the apostles or disciples of Yeshua ben Yosef. Do we have the tomb and the bones? Well, we have a tomb right here. Do we have the bones? I don't know. Let's see. Tomb of the Apostle Philip discovered. This is from Bible or BiblicalArchaeology.org. Discovery was made at Hierapolis, one of the major Christian sites in Turkey. It says, author and excavation director Francesco de Andrea was making an exciting new discovery in the field of Hierapolis, one of the most significant sites in Christian Turkey. A month later, he announced that they had finally found the tomb of the martyred Apostle Philip. The tomb wasn't discovered at the center of the octagonal hilltop martyrium as long expected, however, but in a newly excavated church about 40 yards away. The Andreas team found a 1st century Roman tomb located at the center of the new church, which he says originally contained Philip's remains. This early church of Christian Turkey was built around the tomb in the 4th and 5th century, and the nearby martyrium was built around the same time in the early 5th century. The remains of the Apostle Philip are no longer in the tomb, however. According to DeAndrea, the saint's relics were very likely moved to Hierapolis to Constantinople at the end of the 6th century and then possibly taken to Rome and placed in the newly dedicated church of St. Philip and St. John. Although the 12th century reports describe St. Philip's remains still in Constantinople, the seat of Christian Turkey. So they discovered his tomb, they validated his tomb, they discovered his bones, and they also tested his bones to see that, again, it was somebody from the Middle Eastern region, and now we have found the bones on the tomb of the Apostle Philip. And you can look at this on BiblicalArchaeology.org. You can subscribe to BiblicalArchaeology.org, which I recommend people to do, if you want in-depth articles and everything that I just shared with you on here. All right? Now, Israelite tomb excavation accounts. Do we actually have any accounts of real excavation that was done there? Okay, well, let's see. All right, a person by the name of Louis Felicien del Saucy was a French numismatist, I mean somebody who deal with coins, orientalist, and archaeologist. All right, he was born in Little France, a scion of noble family. He traveled through Syria and Palestine in 1850 and 51, 1863, 1869. On his first trip to Palestine in 1850, searching for something of interest, sounded like a grave robber to me, in a place fraught with danger, he toured the Dead Sea area, misidentified Sodom and Gomorrah, and sketched the first map of Masada. He discovered the Silhan Stela and identified Tel es-Sultan as the site of the ancient city of Jericho. Saucy conducted the first archaeological dig in the Holy Land in 1863. He excavated the tomb of the kings in Jerusalem, mistakenly identifying it as the tombs of the house of David, which we saw was not the was the tombs of the Davidic kings, because we found out earlier that T1, T2, and T3 in the city of David is really where they were buried. All right? It says here, he discovered the sarcophagus of Queen Helena of Ad-Diabene. It says, although he believed the bones inside, wrapped in shrouds with golden embroidery, were the remains of the wife of the king of Judea from the first temple period, possibly Zedekiah or Joash. Saucy was forced to suspend the dig when the news that human bones were being dug up drew the wrath of the Jewish community of Jerusalem. The sarcophagus and other fightings were sent to France and displayed at Louvain. So, when people found out that he was digging up bodies, he had to stop, because they was like, no, you're not doing that, my man. We don't allow that in our culture. You have to understand this stuff, because this stuff is not indigenous to the people that live there. This is Europeans going in, robbing graves, and doing it in the name of science, right? It says, deploring the excavation of an ancient Jerusalem tomb in 1863, right? By Fred McDowell on December 9, 2010. Jerusalem is never without scandal, never without outrage over archaeological excavation of graves. In 1863, the French archaeologist Louis de Saucy excavated or ransacked, see, they're trying to be nice, the Jerusalem site known as the Tomb of the Kings, which was regarded by Jews as the tomb of Ben Kaba Sabua, one of Jerusalem's first century wealthy elite, a charitable man who employed a shepherd named Akiva, according to the Talmud Bavli, right? It says the mid-19th century archaeological assumption about the site was that it was a tomb of several of the kings of Judah. Apparently, this was because the tomb is so striking and was known in Arabic as the Tomb of the Kings. When the Sultan began in 1863 with permission from the Ottoman authorities, the Jerusalemite Jews were outraged. So politically, he was allowed to do it, but the indigenous people said, no, we're not letting you do it. At the desecration of a venerated tomb. What exactly occurred cannot be known, since both accounts differ, but archaeologists were interested in things, not bones. It sounds like somebody's trying to rob a grave, man. It says, so the Saucy scraped the place clean of the sarcophagi, and the angry Jews reburied the bones. So, bones were discovered. Try to leave off with them. They said, nah, you're not doing that. He said, all right, I'm gonna leave the bones alone. Can I just keep the box? They said, all right, you keep the box, there's no bones in it. So the people reclaimed their bones. November 19, 1863 issue of the Lebanon, which can be somewhat anachronistically be called the Sharidai in orientation, excuse me for not pronouncing that correctly, published an article about the incident. The following issue, December 18, 1863, featured the following. And this is the actual article right here that was written. It's kind of small, but I just want to show you this is the actual microfiche of the article that I got from the actual issue itself. Right? Now, the sarcophagi from the Tomb of the Kings. 5 sarcophagi were discovered by Louis Felician del Saucy in the Tomb of the Kings, which excavated in 1863. The inscribed sarcophagi was found in Chamber C. One of the lids inside was sheared, indicating that the sarcophagus may have been altered to fit the smaller room. 2 of the sarcophagi, including the one with the inscription, are now housed in Louvre. 2 are on the Temple Mount, 1 in secondary use under the Qaid Bey Foundation, and the other outside the Islamic Museum. The final one functions as a trough under the foundation of Al-Wat Street in Jerusalem's Old City. The other sarcophagi from the tomb are decorated more ornately than the so-called sarcophagus of Helena and the Louvre, which raises further questions about who was buried in the inscribed coffin. The 2-line inscription reads, in Aramaic, it's translated as Sadah the Queen. Sadah the Queen. While the first line of the inscription is written in Seleucid Aramaic script, the second appears in Aramaic square script. So what they did was, in this place called the Tomb of the Kings, they found 5 of these ossuaries or sarcophagus, and they was doing testing on it. They found out that some of them were actually from kings. They weren't able to identify which kings they were. One was from a queen, and another one was from an unknown person that they don't know, but they see the inscriptions that was marked on the sarcophagi to indicate who they are. So when they did excavations in the Tomb of the Kings, they found these sarcophagi, and they identified some of them as being the actual sarcophagi of the kings of Judah. This is very, very, very important, right? Again, this is where the Old Testament kings of ancient Israel was buried. I'm not going to read into that. This goes more in detail into what I already discussed. But it's an article that was posted by the Biblical Archaeology Society staff. You can look this up on biblicalarchaeology.org. Just sign in. You can get a login for it. But what I'll read is this last part here. It says, well-directed excavations on Baran Rothschild City of David property in 1913 and 14, again 1923 and 1924. Though the area was greatly disturbed by late acquiring, Rowe discovered ancient walls, ritual pools, cisterns, and a circular tower. And most remarkably, 9 rock-cut features that he identified as tombs. All right, the parallel rock-cut tombs, or rock-cut tunnels, labeled as T1 and T2, are two of the most promising of the tombs. T1, it tells you what it looks like. T2 tells you what it looks like. T1 was divided into 2 levels with upper, including a 6-foot rectangular depression at its far end that could have held the body or sarcophagus of the deceased, which later on they discovered. Right? So let's move forward. Another article on this. I don't want to inundate with you with that. But this article is actually telling you about different sites of tombs of individuals that are mentioned in the scripture and also in the Jewish or Hebrew Israelite tradition, right? One of them being the tomb of Bene Hazar is characterized by its freestanding facade or facet with 2 Doric columns all cut in the rock. It has a long Hebrew inscription carved on the architecture above the columns, identified as a tomb and a fish, which means soul, of several members of the Hazar family who had served as priests in the temple and were buried in the rock-hewn tomb below. Okay, we have the tomb of Jason in Rahavia neighborhood, consists of a courtyard with a single Doric column decorating the porch at the entrance to the burial chamber, above which a pyramid was built. Several naval vessels were drawn in the charcoal on the walls of the porch, and among a number of inscriptions in Greek and Aramaic. One laments the decease of Jason, a powerful lament for Jason, son of P, they don't really have the description, who has built that separate tomb, elder rest in peace. We also have the tombs of the Sanhedrin that is discussed in the quote-unquote New Covenant of the New Testament. It's located northwest of the Old City in a neighborhood still called Sanhedria. Above the entrance is a gable with fruit among stylites, acanthus leaves. The large burial cave contains several dozen burial niches, roughly the number of the members of the Sanhedrin from which the tomb's popular name derives. Again, we have all of these things. The funerary inscription of King Uzziah was found in a collection of the Russian convent on the Mount of Olives, but there is no record of the place from which it has been removed. The Aramaic inscription is incised on a stone tablet, and the style of the script dates it to the latter part of the Second Temple period. It tells the reburial of the remains of Uzziah, king of Judah. So they had the bones, they reburied it, and they reburied it during the Second Temple period. It says, "Hither were brought the bones of Uzziah, king of Judah, and do not open." Biblical accounts King Uzziah's deeds and conquests and also describes his burial. It says Uzziah rested with his fathers in the burial field of the kings because they said he is a leper. Again, you will see all of this there. The tomb of Simon the temple builder, who I mentioned earlier, is a simple tomb located north of the Old City. One of the ossuaries found in the tomb bears an inscription in Aramaic, which reads Simon the temple builder. This ossuary presumably contains the remains of a man who participated in the building of King Herod's temple in Jerusalem. Also at the tomb of an individual called Abba was uncovered north in the Old City. On the walls above the repository is an Aramaic inscription in ancient Hebrew letters. Very unusual in this Second Temple period, which reads, I, Abba, son of the priest of Eleazar, which you know is from the lineage of Aaron and is responsible for the priesthood, son of Aaron, the high priest, the oppressed and the persecuted, who was born in Jerusalem and went into exile in Babylonia and brought back to Jerusalem Matthias, son of Judah, and buried him in a cave which I brought by thee. All right, we're going to move forward. Also, the cave of Yosef, son of Caiaphas the high priest. We also have that small tomb as well. Right? Now, if you want to look for some references for some of the stuff that I mentioned, or just a good reading on biblical archaeology, you can look up several of these books here. One is To the Tombs of the Righteous, Pilgrimages in Contemporary Israel by Ed Rivka Gonen, Jewish Funerary Custom Practices and Rites in the Second Temple Period by Raquel Hachalili. It says Yer HaMechot, which is Jerusalem of the Dead by Meron Ben Ishiti, Biblical Archaeology, a very short introduction by Eri H. Klein, Studying the Ancient Israelites by Victor H. Matthews, Ancient Israel and its Life and Institutions by Roland DeVos, The Archaeology of Jerusalem from David to Jesus, which is the DVD that you can order if you type it into Amazon, you can order it. And you can also go to the Biblical Archaeological Review Library, which is at www.bible-archaeology.info/tombs. If you subscribe to this website or the Biblical Archaeological Society, you will get insight in all of this archaeology in regards to the Bible. So when people say this stuff doesn't exist, they have not done the appropriate research. Now, that gets me to the summary. All right, and that here I'm done. I'm sorry for holding y'all, but I wanted to get this information out. So the summary that I want to make is that if somebody, let's say for example, anybody familiar with Ancestry.com? Anybody heard of that site before? You can go on the site and you can actually look through records that they have their pictures, etc., even burial sites of ancestors that may be related to you. Let's say, for example, that you look back, maybe let's say 3 generations, great-grandfather, whoever, and you see your great-grandfather was actually a mason who built all of these edifices. And let's say let's say someplace in South Carolina, right? And he was known for this, right? So let's say, for example, you looked up at Ancestry.com, you got his name, you went to his burial site, you said, wow, this is interesting. He actually built that, right? And then somebody says, hey, you know what? We have a local museum here, and we actually have his body here. Like, what? What you mean you have my great-grandfather's body in some museum? Then you go to the museum and you're looking in the museum and you actually see them have either if he was preserved, if he was preserved, if he wasn't preserved, then maybe they have some bones. But then you start to see a picture of maybe your grandmother. Then you start to see a necklace, a ring that he may have had. You see all these things that are there in this museum. How would that make you feel? What if that was your grandfather? How would that make you feel? Without your permission, they're going to dig up an ancestor of yours because they want people to see who this person is and validate the fact that they made these edifices. To me, that would be disrespectful. I would protest that and you getting them out of there and you bury them back. That is a complete disrespect to a person's ancestors. You do not do that. That's not indigenous. It's not aboriginal to anybody in the land of Africa or the Middle East. They don't rock that way. We learned that archaeology is a European crime against indigenous people and a justification for robbing graves and desecrating our ancestors. The Europeans used the science and art of archaeology to rob graves. Simple as that. They had to be politically correct, so they called it science. But they stole stuff, and a lot of stuff was sold on the black market. Do you know how much these artifacts are worth in museums today? Millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. And how much people come day to day to watch this, the admission that they pay to watch, they're making millions of dollars. This has nothing to do with venerating your ancestors. It's all about a lucrative business. Are y'all following me? What we should do is protest at every European, American museum with these bodies and artifacts and demand that they put them back now that we have the information. If we want to do justice to our ancestors, we should go to each one of these museums and say, thank you for the information, now put it back. Because you are not honoring ancestors. This is not our culture. This is not African culture. This is not Israeli culture. This is not culture of the people of this land. And we want you to put these bodies and artifacts back. You do not have the right to do this. Put it back. Nobody's giving you the authority to do this. If we want to show my order of justice, if you want to be righteous according to the scriptures, and we know that they have artifacts and they have bodies, we need to protest so they can put these things back. Our ancestors need to rest in peace. You know what rest in peace is? You go to a grave where your ancestor calls, rest in peace, leave me alone. Let my body stay where it's at. The moment you dig it up, they're no longer in peace. We should study the ancient civilizations, like the Griot had said earlier in the video I showed you, based on history, culture, architecture, language, and whatever we are allowed to excavate from the people. You see how that white archaeologist went into this West African town and he showed them the things that were there. But the moment he wanted to dig, no, you can't do that. But you can still study a person's history by just looking at the architecture. You know, looking at artifacts that you're allowed to. The people say it's okay. But it's not African to go dig up bodies, man. And then you want to put them in a museum where people pay to come and see them. If ancient Kemet was still here as a nation, they would not allow European archaeologists to come into their country and steal bodies or artifacts for science purposes. We know that Islam is in Palestine, and they pretty much run and own most of the land that you see where their prophets are buried, and they did that for a political reason because they understood the desecration that was taking place by the Europeans, by the Roman Catholic Church. They're preserving their ancestors. If ancient Kemet was read right now, and they was in this room with us, they would turn over in their graves to know that we allow their bodies to be posted in a museum, that we allow people to rob their graves. If they were here as a nation, they would war with the Europeans, talking about they want to come in there and do archaeology and exhumation. They would not allow that. So why we, and some of us who claim to be Kemetic, who trace our lineage back to ancient Kemet, why are we not in the uproar? Why are we supporting the Europeans' excuse and justification to steal the bodies of our ancestors? Something needs to be done about that. So with that being said, my presentation is over. I thank y'all for sitting through this. I know you probably could have went and go watch the movie for about 2.5 hours, you know what I'm saying, on a Sunday night. But if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to ask, and I'm going to pack up and let everybody go. I don't want to hold you. But I just want to give you a lot of information because when people make these exaggerated claims, you have to investigate the intent and the motive behind what they're saying. So and I'm looking in the camera and I'm telling all my brothers that are in the Kemetic community, the people that is telling us that we need to go and get bodies and where's the body, I want to go see it in the museum and I want to get the artifacts, that's not African. And we should protest that they take these bodies and artifacts and put it back so our ancestors can rest in peace. And this goes to everybody that's here and there. And I'm actually, just, I don't know if anybody knows about it, but I'm actually doing a petition to submit to these museums to put these bodies back. Now, I have a Hebrew Israelite ideology, but I put my people, my black people, and their social, political, economic status before my ideology. But here's me being a Hebrew Israelite brother who is in a process of creating a petition to get the bodies of Kemetic ancestors out the museums. Who's gonna side with me? And if they find any bodies of Hebrew Israelites or bones, like the two that I just showed you, a petition is going in to put it back. Put it back. Let them rest in peace. Put it back. So if y'all are really serious about your ancestors, then everybody here, I need your information. Y'all put your name on the petition. If I get 1,000 signatures on it, I can submit it to Congress and get it reviewed. And I can also go to London and submit it to museums there and get it reviewed. So we can get these bodies back. These Europeans do not deserve to touch or know anything about our ancestors.